experienced, no matter how much they like to preach that they've got this really seriously advanced, first world military, they really don't, folks. They're a volunteer military. That a lot of them are either not technically not conscripted, but they have to serve. They've got to do their time. It's expected for them to go there. They are really reluctant to get away from Israel itself and get involved in any kind of heavy combat because it's not really a good look if they start taking casualties. So if you can bait the Israeli troops out, then it's really easy to mess them up big time. And you'll start to see that because they're not experienced. A lot of people, have this misbelief that Israel's been involved in all these wars that the American military has been involved in. They haven't put ground troops on the ground anywhere. So they're really green in terms of going out and taking guys on in hand, face-to-face urban combat, Lebanon, Gaza, all those types of places. They bombard the shit out of those places because it's from a lack of experience. It's not that they need to do it. It's that they're scared that if they get out there and they fight against these guerrilla fighters from Hezbollah and Hamas and all these other agencies, that they'll get their asses handed to them. So every time you see Israel start to venture too far from their border, that's exactly what starts to happen. They're really not anywhere near as experienced as what they make out. And a lot of the time, when they really get involved in anything heavy, they actually get American troops to go over there and do their fighting for them. American troops that are battle proven already, that were involved in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? The Israelis will get them to do their fighting for them. So, and it doesn't surprise me at all why they're getting their, with pardon my French, but why they're getting their asses handed to them by the guys from all around them because, they would be getting guys from combat zones would be coming in to fight the Israelis that are actually experienced fighters, guys from Syria and places like that. They're experienced in urban combat, and they're way more experienced than what the Israelis are in that environment. So if you can take away their advantages, in other words, if you can take away their armor advantages, get those Merkava tanks, really close up, then you can take them out with landmines. You can take them out with missiles really close up. It's easy to destroy tanks if you can get close to them. If you can get in the buildings and take them on hand to hand or, in close quarter combat, then the Apache gunships that they've got supporting them, they can't fire to support their own men because the combat's happening at close quarters. It's not safe to do that. In other words, it equals the fight way more, and that would cause Israel to take way more casualties.
In Genghis, also what Suli's talking about is that area in southern Lebanon, the hill region, right before you get to those heavy urban areas. But yeah, your urban analysis is perfect. Yeah, but it's that hilly region in the south there too. Any additional insight in that?
No, sorry, I'm really honest, Suli. I have technical, battlefield analysis, but I'm not really good with the regional stuff. I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs of the Middle East and like the regional stuff around Israel. I don't know it to be able to go, oh, well, if they go in here, it's better terrain. I can't really talk on that.
It's real hilly terrain.
Yeah, I'm not a guy that will pretend I know what I'm talking about when I don't. I don't know. I can't talk about that actual area.
So wait, while we're
first
talking
of all, I appreciate you being so honest because I like that you can show the person's got a lot of credibility if they're if they're very specific about what they talk about because that shows that they want to talk about things that they know and they're experts of. I really appreciate that. So Andrew, we're gonna say something. If not, want to.
Yes, but Genghis, if you heard him talk about urban warfare, I don't know how far. I don't think they'll get it far enough into that. But that urban warfare is what really kicked their butt in the 1982. I was there in '82, and it was just decimated. But they did it with artillery and from the air. It wasn't their ground force. Their ground forces were incompetent, but they killed a lot of innocent civilians. Because that's why I'm going to talk to Ryan Dawson about. But man, that's awesome, Genghis. And notice, I want to add to that. From day one, I was getting terrible pushback. Oh, you're just saying that you're trying to scare people. No, I'm talking about that area in the Persian Gulf. The United States Navy cannot fight their war there. They have the advantage there. But when I said that, I'm anti-American. I'm spreading fear. No, you heard Joel. You heard Genghis. David Z came in here. So we're just trying to let Americans know the truth, folks, because we love you, we love our country, and we care. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, tactics don't care about bias. It doesn't work that way. You know, it's just simple. How does it look on a map? We're all standing around a map, looking at the ground, going, "Okay, where can we get in? Where are we going to be vulnerable? If we come in from this direction?" It's got nothing to do with, oh well, I really love America or I love Iran, or it's soldiers don't think that way. We just think about how do we win the fight.
Simon, can you give us a financial update for the last 24 hours?
Suleiman, I sent you some news too.
Sure. Simon, can you give us a financial update?
Yeah, sure, everybody.
And I
Hey.
hope you're doing well as well. Sorry, I had food in my mouth there, so I was trying to quickly get that information. Yeah. So, Simon, thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. Give us a financial update of the last 24 hours. Is it the end of the world?
If you don't get that Strait of Hormuz open soon, it is severe pressure for a lot of countries. Um, Look, this is already creating significant disruption. You know, everybody will be in panic mode, trying to renegotiate their supply chains. Trying to figure out. Look, there are countries which are going to be in desperate states: Jordan, Egypt, Bangladesh. These countries were already suffering from shortages and had just figured out their new routes, and now their new routes have been cut off. So, you know, Egypt and Jordan were both receiving gas from Israel. That's been cut off right now. That creates both a financial choke point for Israel that won't be receiving that energy, that revenue, but also Egypt and Jordan were there because they needed that. And so Bangladesh was already suffering from shortages. You know, that's going to be, things are going to get worse there. Um, there is no, we have 4 weeks to continue like this. 4 weeks is pandemic level disruption for certain countries. We're now up to approximately $93 a barrel, and the only reason we're that low is simply because we don't know whether the US insurance guarantee and the the escort service, I guess, by the U.S. Navy, whether that holds or not. There's going to be severe disruption in the technology field. The ability to finish the creation of certain semiconductor chips via South Korea. Those aren't moving. Those need to find a whole new route. They need to get certain minerals that come from Qatar. Uh, so this is, unless that strait is opened by hook or by crook, this is already a complete disaster. So there is no such thing as this carrying on for 6 weeks. So now, if you combine that with the analysis that I have no clue about, but everyone's saying the shortages of munitions, you can't really print bullets. You can print money, but you can't force. Apparently, there's going to be, a requirement to try and get another 50 billion a budget from. There's a lot of talk around, really pushing these American military companies to try and produce things. Um, I don't know the extent to which that's true, but just economically, this is where the real damage is being done right now. The markets, they're kind of being held up. There's not really related to this, but there was already severe distress in the private credit market. I think it's a bit coincidental, but we've started to see BlackRock like suspend withdrawals from some of the less liquid big private credit markets. A bunch of fraud was there. They're meant to be, these are illiquid markets, but they guarantee a certain level of withdrawals. They've decided that they don't have the liquidity to meet those withdrawal requests for those that invested in BlackRock products. By the way, everyone should be boycotting BlackRock. ETFs are just mechanisms for them holding your assets and giving you a paper version of that asset. If you can, you should be, owning your gold or silver or Bitcoin directly.
But by the way, Simon, speaking of Bitcoin, real quick, I wrote you, but I don't think you saw it. Did you see that they gave Kraken a master account at the Fed?
I did, yeah. And full disclosure, I'm an early shareholder in Kraken. But yeah, they've opened up.
So you're a Zio.
I'm a Zio.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Well, I mean, in 2011, these companies like are pretty, different to what they are now. But
Yeah, I was just joking. But that changes. Isn't that sending like a? I don't know. It doesn't that seem like banking is okay with no banking almost, kind of.
well, I mean, the implications are that they'll be able to bypass having to build infrastructure on top of the banks. I don't know what the full implications are at this stage, but yeah, I mean that's full integration.
Well, well, you have savings account in most American banks that pay you like 0.1%, and Kraken will be able to pay you 6%. I think that kind of sends an eviction notice to banks today, unless they adopt. To be honest, I think that's the biggest implication that I see.
Yeah, so obviously with Clarity out, they're trying to stop the stablecoin providers being able to pay that, but say come and get a banking license, and so they're trying to capture them in through that mechanism. But yeah, anyway, um, the I think the private
You,
credit.
you don't see that as a big overhaul as I do.
Bit off topic, but I mean, yeah, we can carry. Like,
No, I just find it strange that it's happening now, and there's no press on it whatsoever. And that's to me, I see it as a huge shift. Um, and maybe I'm just overplaying it. I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
okay, um, yeah, I mean, it's but they've been applying for this thing for years. So I think they've been applying for about 3 years, and then once it gets into the Trump administration, you obviously had the lifting of Operation Choke Point 2.0, and so they'd already set up the infrastructure, and then yeah, it gets announced now. Um, what do you mean by overhaul? You mean like disruption with banks?
Yeah, a huge disruption with banks.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, that's been happening. And then yeah, I mean, look, this is the private credit market looks like it might be the shakiest market, the weakest link at the moment. We'll see what action it kind of pushes back into banks at the end of the day. And that's also an essential part of the component of funding out these AI data centers. Combine that with some of whether they're real threats or idle threats, or the fact that the Gulf sovereign wealth funds are going to be reconsidering their investment portfolios in order to apply some leverage. I don't know how these AI data centers are going to be built out without some kind of consolidation into some of the bigger cash flowing companies like Google and Apple. But anyway, the market I couldn't call it a disastrous market. There's nothing really the stocks at the moment. There's no real symbol of distress. So it feels like if I am to read into the market, obviously the oil price is really factoring in that this is a major shift and a major problem. But the stock market doesn't really believe that this is going to last long. And so I'd be incredibly surprised if the Strait of Hormuz and there's continual escalation and this goes on for like 4 weeks or something like that. It would really shock me at the moment. I'm expecting some kind of narrative towards an off ramp. I mean, I would expect it at some point next week, but we shall see. I don't know. You know, the longer this goes on for, the worse it's going to get. Yeah, so there's nothing sustainable about this current.
Guys, it's really crazy. Hello, if you're watching, what's going on, you feel me? That was a little introduction to the live, but it's really crazy hearing people talk like this. And when you know your piece in the financial system when it comes to crypto and all that stuff, it's insane. Can't you tell? Nobody knows where this is going right now. But if you're in cryptocurrency, you're getting very, very excited with what is to come. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I will not be live too long today. This is just a quick one, just to get a quick update on what is going on, right? But the financial system and a lot of this stuff is coming into play. It's being questioned a lot by the public right now. And this is something we have been waiting for a very, very, very long time. We can take a quick look at the crypto markets and we see we are bleeding just a little bit today, but there's more important things to talk about, right? Obviously, we have the war going on, etc. Tons of missiles going here, there, everywhere. But something even more insane is we have somebody by the name of Catherine Fitz who gave an amazing, amazing interview on basically how they stole $50 trillion from us, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to go ahead and play a song real quick. I'm going to go ahead and play this and listen to this, or at least play the soundbite that I found of her talking about this. But it gets pretty crazy, and then we'll get back to what the public has to say. But my God, guys. I mean, it's not, I mean, what is there to even talk about? Right? So let's see what she has to say real quick. Let me see if I can find the actual clip I want to listen to. Here we go. Lock in, y'all. Lock in. Let me play a little intro song real quick.
Moonwalking on the legend, yeah, we stay lit. XRP rise, can't nobody quit. No face crypto drip, stack it, flip it, hit. Fire waves crashing, feel that crypto hit. Stacking sats like racks, pockets never flat. Cross border flex, banks can't match that. Let it glow in, watch the numbers going up. Flash settle speed, feel that money erupt. Got that digital drip, NFT fits. Liquidity floods, yeah, we taking big hits. Haters get sure when we hit the block. XRP rocket, yeah, we never stop. Sipping fiat like it's lemonade, but I don't spill. Crypto flows like a tidal wave, feel the thrill. Smart contracts automatic, chains never chill. Money moves smooth while they stuck in the drill. Moonwalking on a legend, yeah, we stay lit. XRP rising, can't nobody quit. No face crypto drip, stack it, flip it, hit. Far away, crashing, feel that crypto hit. Moonwalking, XRP to the sky. Banks looking sideways while my wallet fly. No face, crypto stack it, don't ask why. Digital kings, we live, we never die. Crypto drip like sauce, liquidity floss. Transactions fast, no pause, no loss. Bridge the world like Ripple, global boss. Yeah, haters salty while we double the toss. Chain reaction, heart election, all automatic. XRP popping off that chart, so dramatic. Call it flex insane. Got that cryptographic, money in motion, life cinematic. TikTok vibes, this one go viral. Look so sticky, crypto spiral. North Face crypto, energy title. XRP moonwalk, skyscraper moonwalking on a legend, yeah we stay lit. XRP rising, can't nobody quit. North Face crypto drip, stack it, flip it. Viral waves crashing, feel that crypto hit. Moonwalking, XRP to the sky. Banks looking sideways while my wallet fly. North Face crypto, stack it, don't ask why. Digital kings, we live, we never die. Moonwalking, flip it, crypto noise, crypto XRP, rocket, yeah, chains on fire, waves get higher, digital empire, we the supplier.
All right, yo, let's tap in, let's lock in, bruh. This is a crazy interview. Let me play the sound clip real quick. This is crazy, guys. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised they haven't found this lady yet. But honestly, the truth is just out. It's time everybody just listens and understand what's really going on here. Let me see if I can get this sound clip, because I don't know how long we're gonna be able to play this.
A financial coup. So let me show you.
You know what? Fuck that. We're playing this shit.
Believing the conspiracies were wonderful. You know, I never, and I grew up believing the conspiracies were wonderful. You know, I never, you know, it's like conspiracies is how you build your future. It's how you gather and organize and implement power. So conspiracies were wonderful things. I didn't know conspiracy was bad. And when I got booted out of the establishment, I started hearing negative things about a conspiracy. I was like, you're talking yourself into being powerless. How are you going to build your future unless you're great at conspiracies and embrace them and love them?
Hello everyone, this is Masako Ganaha. I'm an independent journalist from Japan. Michael Yan and we are visiting in the Netherlands, and we are spending wonderful time with Miss Catherine Austin Fitz. And today we got this wonderful opportunity to interview her for our audience. We have been learning a lot, and we want to share these experiences and the knowledge and all the teachings with you. So, Michael, let's begin.
Oh, this has been quite a lovely trip so far, more than 2 weeks. And we've been traveling around, seeing many things and seeing the Solari team, which has been unbelievable in person. This is quite a team. And so actually, let's get going.
Yes. Mid-November, Michael had an opportunity to interview, or Catherine interviewed Michael. And I think Michael was very energized and he was very happy after coming out of the interview room. He was very excited. And then from this opportunity led us to actually visit Catherine, see her face to face. And before let her microphone, I would like to introduce her bio. Everybody knows, but I would like to make sure that everybody knows who she is fully. Catherine served as managing director and member of the board of directors of the Wall Street Investment Bank, Dillon, Read and Corporation, Inc., as Assistant Secretary of Housing and Federal Housing Commissioner at the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development in the first Bush administration, and was the president of Hamilton Securities Group, Inc. Catherine has designed and closed over 25 billion of transactions in investments to date and has led portfolio and investment strategy for 300 billion of financial assets and liabilities. Catherine graduated from the University of Pennsylvania and Wharton School and studied Mandarin Chinese at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. She constantly blogs for the Solari Report, and I've been watching so many materials from her online, and there are so much that I need to learn and catch up. So thank you very much for this opportunity. It's been a great honor for us.
So thank you very much for coming. It's been wonderful having you in the Netherlands, and we're in cahoots, and we look forward to many more events of cahoots with you. So.
Oh, thank you very much. And one of the things that I deeply felt in my heart spending time with you and all of Solari families is that you are not only helping people with the financial, studies or learning or how to see the world, but you're actually practicing the creation of the real society or how the society should function, from how to eat to how to have a personal relationship with the coworkers. And so I am really blessed to have experience with this environment.
So we believe that real change comes from people changing how they live. And if you look at a successful financial system, it should be enforced by culture. So I used to have a friend who I always quote from Washington. He used to say that culture is the integration of the divine in everyday life. And after listening to him, I came back to him and I said, John Edward, you forgot it can be the integration of the demonic in everyday life. And I think it's very important. The more people who shift and practice a divine culture, and that's how we're going to get real change. Because if you look at all the things we say we don't like in the world, it comes when we go to work every day and implement those things, or we put our savings and finance those things. So I think the more of us who can walk our talk and shift into a higher culture, the better off we're going to be.
I see. There are so many people who engage in this kind of world, meaning combating against global totalitarianism. But I see a lot of people use this opportunity to get their frustration out, but they don't engage in real life. So I really like how Solari family leads people around the team.
So one of the reasons that, I moved to living more than half time in the Netherlands in 2020. And one of the reasons I love the Netherlands is because as soon as anyone in the Netherlands complains about anything, the first thing someone says is, what's the action? There's an assumption that in the United States, I live in a rural area, and when a tree falls down, the assumption is we have to move it. We can't wait for anybody else. You don't wait for the government. You don't wait for somebody else. You have to take action yourself.
Yes. So far, we've been spending a couple of weeks now. What have you been thinking about?
Well, first of all, I love some of I'm not sure how many are public yet, so some of your ideas, but I love the ideas that I've been hearing so far. And again, I want to repeat, the Solari team is top notch. Everybody that I've spoken with is really quite serious people. And so we can have high level conversations without booting up first. You know what I mean? And we just lay out the map and get to work. And so this is, a lot of my readers already follow you, already follow the Slary report and you. And so I know that they're going to be happy to see this. One of the things that is very interesting is that Netherlands is one of the key targets of the globalists in Europe, obviously, for many reasons. One is massive agricultural production, Rotterdam Harbor, the biggest, port in Europe, and just south of that is Antwerp. It's Rotterdam's at the mouth of the Rhine River. Right. Keeping in mind routes and resources. Wars are all about routes, resources, and underlying mythologies, right?
Right. And it's a very strategic position on the North Sea.
Absolutely. It's just everything. It's a perfect storm of going to take Netherlands, right? And Germany, of course, as well, which is next door on the border. Mm-hmm. And as you know, that they're very serious about just dissolving all the borders.
Right.
And there's quite a bit of focus on going very quickly with the German-Dutch border. Of course, this is where they wish to build Tri-State City, a huge, smart city. Actually, we need to use the right words. We've talked about this. You are in total coherence the way we are. We have to use the accurate words. Otherwise, all else that follows is false. And smart city is not accurate word. It's really prison city, right? This is what they really are. So if we call them smart cities, I'm calling it that so that people know that what we're talking about are the prison cities.
It's a digital concentration camp.
Absolutely. And you look at the way that they're laying these things out, it's physical and digital, right? Mm-hmm. So like literally physical as well, the way that they're being designed, and digital.
Right.
And so physical backed up by digital. Or is it digital backed up by physical? I'm not sure, but it's both working in conjunction.
Well, it's physical control, surveillance controlled, and surveillance and controlled by digital.
Right. And they're quite intense on that. You talk about it often. And what can you say about what's happening in Netherlands in that regard?
So I think what's happening in Netherlands is very similar to what's happening in the United States and North America. And that's the implementation of a digital control grid. And it's described in different ways in Europe than in the United States. And, but maybe if I can just show you a model. So if you look here on this slide, we have different aspects of the digital systems that have been going into place for years. And I think of the digital concentration camp as or the digital control grid. Think of a corral being built around us, and they've been building 3 sides of the corral, so it still feels free. But when a series of things happen, digital ID, programmable money, and AI, that snaps the 4th fence into place, and then you wake up and you are in a state of total control.
It's unfortunate, but she is telling the truth, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to digital ID, AI. Crypto is going to pay its role in the digital money, digital assets, all digital money, guys. It's right here. And it's like, we can be upset about it, right? It doesn't have to mean a bad thing, right? I think crypto is a great thing, right? But this is for full-on control of you guys. I mean, it's just the truth. It's what's going on. And when these people have so much power, they can just will their way in the public into a war that they don't want to be in. They are going to will everyone's way into a full-on control, digital ID, digital asset, all that stuff. It's all going to be part of the new system. And there will be few assets that do benefit from this. And maybe there will be some people who can benefit as well. And that's like the crazy, unfortunate truth that we're living through right now. But I'd rather do something and give it my best effort than sit around and just cry about a war. This shit's crazy, guys.
So these have been building, and if you can flip to the next slide, Robert, once they integrate, boom, you're in the digital concentration camp. Many people don't see it coming because there are many different disparate parts. And if you try to warn them about a disparate part, they'll say, oh, well, I find QR codes very convenient. Well, you may find them convenient until they snap into your digital concentration camp. There are 3 component parts, and again, they look different in Europe than they look in the United States. But the key thing you need for that fourth part of the corral to snap into place is you need an interoperable digital ID that can operate globally. So we just saw the EU, or it was the EU or the UK, reach an agreement with Canada on interoperability between their digital ID. So the goal is to have a digital ID that is very precise and high quality, because I want to make sure you're, because if you look at all the surveillance and control that's going to run off of the system, you need that digital ID to be very high quality. And so you see the US trying to push real ID through the driver's license systems. It's being done to the national governments or other way. It's in Europe, but everybody's driving to that, getting the digital ID. Now, at the same time, there are two other parts to understand. One is what I call the surveillance and tracking system. And surveillance and tracking includes many different things, but basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to identify every person, where they go, what they're doing, and be able to track their various movements and behaviors, including spending. So you've got a surveillance system, and one of the things you see is in the United States, enormous pushback now because they're trying to put in much more hardware and infrastructure. And they seem to be, from what I can tell, moving much faster than Europe. So let's talk about the local infrastructure. You have the Congress in the United States trying to pass a new series of telecom laws and the FCC regulation that will allow them to basically override all local restrictions for telecom towers. And they want to put, for 6G, they want many more telecom towers out. They rolled out a lot during the pandemic, but now they want to put more. Then we see the AI centers going in, and the AI centers the data centers are very important, because if you look at the massive amount of data that you're going to be using to do the surveillance or to do some of the other functions, it requires massive database capacity. And of course, there's very increasing local opposition because the environmental.
And you guys recall just hearing about in that spaces on X, people talking about the fact that the private credit markets are seeing the first big hit when it comes to this war right now in the Middle East. And that private credit really affects the building of AI centers. And so these people who are trying to bring in this new system are seeing direct issues because of this war. But it's going to happen. And it's going to be unfortunate for people who aren't ready, but if you're ready and you're in the right assets, you will benefit. Shit's getting crazy, guys.
Demands of energy, water, and land for these data structures or infrastructure is very huge. And then finally, you have systems of cameras and drones to track license plates and to track other movements from the sky. And so what's interesting is, for years, I've been talking or warning about the digital control grid going in, and most people didn't see it. But suddenly now, with the drones and the cameras and the telecom, suddenly people locally are beginning to realize, wait a minute, we as taxpayers are funding the building of this prison, and we can see it with our own eyes. It's become physical. And so you have enormous pushback. And okay, so we have the digital ID, we have the surveillance, and part of that surveillance system allows you to do coercion. So if you need to do a false flag, if you need to do a school shooting, if you need to do an assassination, it's that surveillance and tracking that really helps you engineer that. And then, of course, the coup de grace is over here on the right, programmable digital money. Europe is much more focused on doing central bank digital currency. The United States just passed the Genius Act and is working on the Clarity Act to do asset tokenization, but they have it set up where they've reserved and then, of course, they just took legislative steps to preserve the central bank's ability to do a central bank digital currency. But they want to have a programmable money feature with private stable coins and crypto. And of course, the crypto comes with a distributed ledger, which is part of creating the database system you need to do programmable money. So a little bit different in Europe. Europe is much more focused on the ECB doing a CBDC, and the United States now sort of holding out the options to do both private currency that's programmable money or CBDC. So, but either way, the fourth gate on the corral locks in when not only can I control your spatial movements with this kind of surveillance and tracking, but I can turn your money on and off. And I can turn your money on and off in very granular ways. So if you're good, I can give you a little bit more money. If I'm bad, I can take out your money or implement your taxes. And if you look at the system in combination, what it essentially does is it takes control of fiscal policy out of the hands of the legislature and the executive branch and gives it to the bankers. So let me show you a video. In 2020, Augustine Carstens was then the head general manager of the BIS, and he was speaking at a panel at the IMF about the beauties of central bank digital currency. And so let me just play you a 1-minute video of what he said about why he likes central bank digital currency.
All our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
Okay, so let me go back. What he's saying is, we, the bankers, can set taxes. So if we want to raise taxes, we just take it out of your account. And we can decide how you use your money, which means we can control where you go and what you can buy. If we don't want you buying pizza, you can't buy pizza with your money. So you're talking about extraordinary granular control of 100% of your transactions. Now, when you add to it this same infrastructure, control your access to electricity or to energy. So between the ability to control all of your energy transactions and all of your financial transactions, we've literally got complete control. So if we say it's a pandemic, you're locked down, you can't leave your house, your money won't work if you leave your house. Your electric car won't work if you leave your house. We have that kind of control. Now, let me jump back to the surveillance for just a second, because I want to talk about two parts of the surveillance which are very, very important to this whole sort of control grid. One is, if you remembered what happened at the beginning of the war with Iran earlier this year, literally the war started not with an invasion or an attack. It started with an assassination of 10 of the top 12 people in the chain of command in Iran's governance and military, right? And one of the reasons you could do that is if you look at the surveillance systems, you're now in a position to identify and track every person. So you're not tracking the leaders, you're tracking 92 million, because to understand who's the leader and where they are and what they're doing, you've got to identify everybody. If they can do it in Iran, essentially, they can do it certainly in Europe and the United States. So I wrote a piece at the time about the panopticon, which is Whitney Webb and Ian Davis's term, which is it's a form of circular prison where everybody can be seen, but nobody can see who's the guard is looking at. So we are now in the panopticon. And if you remember, right after that happened, everybody in Europe started to become much more obedient to the U.S. administration. And I think that's because they're scared. And part of this system, and it's one we don't begin to understand the way we'd like to, is we know from the food, the spraying, and the injections and the pharmaceuticals that we've been integrating particles in our body that make it much more easy for what's called the Internet of Bodies. So for the surveillance systems to see us and to influence what we think. So for example, we've been doing a lot on the Solari report on what we call cognitive liberty, which is all the different systems, whether it's propaganda or disinformation, but also high-tech electrical, electromagnetic engineering of, sort of brainwashing. And, this is just an example of different reporting on whether or not the ingredients that we are ingesting into our body can be used to integrate with telecommunications to affect how we think. So this is a patent related to AT&T for essentially biological hosts. But here's an article about AI will soon read your mind. Your thoughts aren't private anymore. So, that's one of the reasons you see me. My phone's always in a Faraday bag unless I'm absolutely using it, because I don't, whatever technology can interfere with digital technology, we do everything we can to try and protect ourselves. So this surveillance system and coercion is very, very invasive. And then when you combine it with programmable money, then you're talking about a slavery system, because the legislature loses all its powers to the bankers. The bankers have complete control, and they believe with invisible technology, some of it's not invisible. Drones are not invisible. But between the surveillance and coercion, they think they can implement central control. And so you're really talking about a dictatorship of the mega rich if this system locks into place. Now, the European version, from everything I can see, seems less invasive and more run by sovereign governments. What the U.S. is doing is they very much want this machinery run by private corporations. And it's much more, we just did a wrap-up, which you've seen, on plunder. And it's much more a plunder economic model than a sovereign government having tight control. It's private guys. Think of North America is going warlord and Europe is going dictator.
That's a good way to put it. North America going warlord. Well, there's people in Europe going warlord as well. And there's some serious crossover, isn't there?
Well, here's the thing. If you look at the surveillance and coercion and the digital ID and the programmable money, most people in the G7 nations cannot fathom where this is going. Because I've been trying to explain for many decades where this is going. I came out of the Bush administration in 1991 and I said, the top guys are going to get a hold of this technology and kill us all. And the reason I started Hamilton Securities and did everything I can to kind of come up with a plan B, I didn't want to be a slave. I didn't want my family to be a slave. I didn't want to live in a slave society. And it was clear what they were up to. But when you try to explain to people who have enjoyed the blessings of freedom, they can't fathom why anybody would want to do this. And one of the things they don't fathom is that there is a small percentage of the population who is born psychopathic without empathy. And they are very good at getting together and organizing and using political and military means to get control. And, so it's been very hard for the population to see how this fits together. So let me show you two more videos. This is one of just Chinese kids during the pandemic. When people say, oh, I don't mind QR codes, I show them that.
Kids are QR coded. Amazing.
Well, here it's just a piece of paper put on them. But ultimately, the goal of and I think the nanoparticles is QR codes will be physical. So let me show you. This is Richard Werner, who's a top expert on central banking and, of course, wrote his book, Princes of the Yen about the Japanese central bank. Speaks Japanese. Extraordinary. And he and I were in Malmo, Sweden in 2023, and Richard was talking about central bank digital currencies in Europe. And let me just show you what he said.
Also, they never talk about the nature of this CBDC. What is it actually going to look like? They never talk about that. Right. But I heard one European central banker tell me what it's going to look like. He saw it. He was invited to one of the old central banks in Europe that are very much promoting this. And they showed him. And, he's a top, executive director of another central bank in Europe. And there's no reason to believe that he was telling me a story. And he was around this large and would be implanted under your skin. So that is the plan.
Right.
And of course, that has other implications on top of what we've mentioned, on top of the control aspects, because that actually enters your body. In my view, violates human dignity, and can be then used for even in terms of functionality beyond the monetary and economic transaction purposes. So highly dangerous, and definitely something we have to oppose. And so using cash is one of the things we can do to make sure that the hurdle will be higher for the central planners to introduce the CBDC.
So I believe instead of using chips under the skin now, they think nanoparticles can, whether it's injected or sprayed, that they can use that. But whatever the infrastructure is, what you're talking about is literally creating an infrastructure, an internet of bodies that can be used for surveillance, coercion, and programmable money financial control. So when you tell people this, it's so hard to fathom that anybody would do this. And yet the system's been steadily marching into place. And now as it becomes more evident and more people realize, I just saw a wonderful video of somebody walking down the street in the UK, and he was basically saying, we're not going to let you send our kids to war to kill them, because we understand if you look at this thing you did and this thing you did, and, this is all just depopulation, and you're a poodle anyway, you're not in control, but what you're talking about is the general population can now fathom that the agenda is this dark. And as a result, all of these things are running into an enormous amount of friction and pushback. So the way I would say, the Chinese concept of mandate of heaven, the leaders in North America and in the United States, for the most part, have lost the mandate of heaven, other than what can be delivered with brainwashing. There's a segment of the population definitely in the trance.
They've lost the benefit of the doubt. That's for sure. We now expect that our so-called leaders are up to nefarious ends.
Right. And nobody believes a word they say.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Right. We always expect now. This is the way it was when I was living in communist countries. Right. Nobody believes the government at all. Right. And that's actually unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And that's the way we have to adjust ourselves very quickly, because they're definitely here to depopulate and control the remnant.
I have a question about, you talked about when you explain those things to the people cannot fathom. So what was do you have any personal experience that led you to realize those things are real?
So I grew up I had an interesting childhood. My father was a very successful surgeon, but he wanted to live close to the university. So I grew up in a very poor neighborhood, and I went back and forth between school and family and various commitments between very poor people to all the way to very wealthy people. And I lived a life where I went back and forth between many different parts of society. And I saw a lot about how things work. So I remember when I was 7, one of the kids in my neighborhood got shot by a policeman who shot him in the back, and of course never was prosecuted for it because that's how it worked in poor neighborhoods. So, so I had a phenomenal amount of knowledge about how the world really worked, both the overt side. So I watched the drugs come in and saw a lot of the shenanigans that went on. And so, so I understood part of the world was overt and part was covert. And I knew a lot about the world. What I believed was that you could never buck the system. You had to work your way up in the system and try and change from within. And so everything I had done was always to try and work within the system. And I only left the system when I got thrown out. So, because I was trying to work within the system and what I was doing was working. It was successful. What's interesting is if the people who are running the system would come to me and say, you have to stop. I thought I had permission to do what I was doing. No. I didn't think I was doing anything off the, outside my lane. And if they'd come to me and said, don't do this, stop, I would have. Because I thought you had to work within the system. And I think part of it is if you look at how, what happened in the mid-90s, then they really decided to go dark. And there was no room. And here was the thing. I wasn't going to go along. If you look at the decisions they made between 94 and 97 and what they did, I think they made a terrible mistake. I totally disagree with what their plan was. And I just, I was never going to go along with it. And I just think they probably knew that about me. And so out I got thrown.
At one point, you were asked or got a phone call to be a governor of Fed, which was for Mr. Global, their society, you are very precious quality person that they wanted to drag you into their world and work for them. But you said you don't want to do it.
So what had happened was when I left the Bush administration, I didn't get along with the secretary, so I had to leave. And I wanted to go back in, but after a certain period of time when I was invited to go back into one position that didn't make sense for me. But I finally started a company, and then having started the company, it was too late. And, but the other thing is I wanted to build financial equity. I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I wanted to build equity. I didn't want to be, I didn't want to be a high priced bureaucrat in the federal system. So, anyways, it was really funny because Nick Brady, was the Secretary of Treasury, and he was the one who invited me to go in. And he called and I said, Nick, I can't do it. It's too late. And then he called back and he said, well, who am I going to put in if you're not going to go in? He had assumed I would be able to go in. So I came up with a list of names and recommendations for him. And while I was working on that, John Sununu, who was chief of staff, called me. He and Brady squabbled a lot. And he said, Brady just said you turned down the Fed. Is that true or is he lying to me again? This is pretty funny. I said, no, John, I started a company. It's too late. I can't come in. So he said, you can go on the board of Sallie Mae part-time. Would you do that? And I said, yeah. So he said, okay, I'll put you on the board of Sallie Mae. And then he slammed down the phone. So that's how I ended up on the board of Sallie Mae.
What a story. So you were almost the big boss at the Fed.
No, I would have been one of the governors. Not
one of the governors.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
People only hear the Fed in the word, but you are actually...
Well, actually, my mother had worked at the Fed. She was an economist before she had kids. And my grandfather was dean of Wharton and had a lot of close relationships with people at the Fed. And in fact, I got into Wharton because Willis Wynn, who was the dean of Wharton, helped me. There are two ways I got into Wharton. One was Willis was there, and then Charlie Grantham, who was the dean of admission, was my best customer at the La Terrace bar. And I used to always tell Charlie, if you don't get me into Wharton, I'll cut you off. And he'd say, you would make a great investment banker. Anyway, but he was a great guy. But Willis then became head of the Cleveland Fed. So our family had a lot of relationships at the Fed. And in fact, my second husband's mother worked at the Fed. So we were kind of in that world.
We read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Uh-huh.
So we know about the Fed, and so being able to meet you to know those worlds, it's pretty like lifetime experience for me.
Yeah, it's super interesting. In fact, we called G. Edward Griffin, all three of us, the other day and talked with him. G. Edward Griffin, for those who haven't read The Creature from Jekyll Island, he's the author, and everybody should read that book, The Creature from Jekyll Island.
It's a great book.
It's absolutely vital to read.
So I'm very interested in the history of monetary policy, but believe it or not, the most successful currencies historically are fiat currencies that are well governed. And if you look at the problem with the dollar, it's debt-based. The problem is the debt and the control. You know, the people think, yeah, the dollar is powerful because of oil. It's powerful because of debt. So,
what currencies have been well managed?
So if you go back in history at various times, some of the European currencies were well managed, and then you go before that. And the problem becomes always that, you know, if productivity should fall or plunder should fall, whatever is really making the economy balance, you know, if people are tempted to then inflate, you know, create too much currency or do something that debases the currency, or you get too much counterfeiting. And it's always a question of how do you maintain the high quality? How do you ensure not to have the debasement that can come with easy money, you know? So it's always a political question. How do you hold the line on not allowing debasement?
Seems quite difficult. It's like putting cocaine in front of a cocaine addict.
Right.
The ability to print money, right? There's the ability to print their own cocaine at our expense.
And, you know, so one of the critical questions is, you know, throughout history, every time we've tried to issue currency through the Treasury, you know, the president who tried to do that was assassinated, or you had assassination attempts. So not every one of them died. Some of them, the guy from Tennessee made it, you know, and ended up having quite a fight with central banks as a result. But, you know, that is basically a war between sovereign power and private power. Will private parties control the currency, or will the sovereign power control it? And Richard Werner's book, The Princes of the Yen, is about that same squabble in Japan. And there's been a tremendous effort worldwide to get the central banks controlled privately, and that control enough centralized so that you can literally have a global control. And that's part of, if you look at this, the Wesley Clark's, we're going to invade 7 countries in 5 years. You know, my interpretation of that was they were trying to get all those central banks in the system. They're trying to get enough control so that they could have monetary and now fiscal control of those countries. So one of the critical issues when you look at these different systems, which is the programmable money, the digital ID, the surveillance, one of the critical issues around the world is, will the control of the digital control grid in a nation be under the control of that sovereign government and that central bank? Or will it operate at a international level? Who's going to control the control grid, country by country and place by place? Big question. And, you know, the BIS has been running a global process of sort of prototyping and working with central banks all around the world to implement this digital control grid through the financial system. And one of the big debates, now everybody's on board. So Russia's doing it, China's trying to do it. So everybody's working to do this, but then the real question becomes, okay, where's the real power? Where's the real control? And that's the sort of $64,000 unanswered question.
It's like the Highlander. There can be only one. Somebody's going to end up fighting each other. Always.
Right. And these databases create, you know, the unbelievable opportunity for terrible things to be done. So the power that comes with being able to control some or all of them is extraordinary, because you're setting up a system so very few people can control the many. But it's got to be backed up by physical force. So it matters who has hypersonic missiles. It matters who has, anti-gravity propulsion. Science and technology matter because ultimately the system has to be backed up by force.
Ultimately, the law of the jungle still prevails.
Absolutely.
And there's no end in sight for that.
Right. And what's unfortunate when you talk to people about the digital control grid, they think that some particular aspect is benign, and they don't understand. No, the people who are going to control this, you're building machinery, so the people who have the biggest gun can control everything easily, quickly.
Basically, seize the headquarters where the control grid is controlled from. Right. One thing I think you have a question, but one thing I think is very important, because a lot of the people that watch you are very serious people, and ours as well, our programs as well. And some of these people are in power positions, and or they're directly related to people who are. And so, like, one step away, like living under the same roof. And one thing that's important to keep in mind is, if you were forced to take the jab or coerced to take the jab, you are not part of the arc, the dark arc. They either have already assassinated you and your family, or they tried, one or the other. And that includes royal families around the world. That includes central bankers. That includes CEOs of big companies. If you took the jab, they either already have killed you or they tried. So they're not your team. We are. Right.
And I was shocked at who didn't know not to take the jab.
It was a big shakeout, wasn't it?
So I told you the story of the MP who told, when Andrew Bridgen was in the parliament, one of the MPs, he was trying to persuade him to support him in stopping COVID shots for children. And the MP wasn't going to do it and was trying to sort of shut him down, and finally turned to him and said, Andrew, you took the shot. You're going to be dead in 5 years. I don't need to care what you think.
I actually reevaluated who I'll actually spend a lot of time with for that very reason. I'm like, they might be dead soon. I need to actually invest my time in people that are more likely to be alive. I mean, that's unfortunate, but that's reality. This is war.
You got to be careful. My guess is that different places were on a quota system and different populations were on a quota system. So I think a lot of people got saline. And you can't assume if somebody got the shot that they got either a bad batch or an mRNA. They could have gotten the saline shot.
I'm not assuming that, but it was one of those, like, hey, I mean, we're in a state of war, so we have to make, and where am I going to, the very limited resource of time, where am I going to invest it? In people that are now sick from it or what? Right. We just don't know. We have no idea how this is going to unfold at this point.
But it is dangerous that you have many people who don't know what they're on the menu, and it can be dangerous to work with them because they don't know. And so they're going to take, you're going to hit a place and they're going to take a different turn than you, and it may be inconvenient given what's going on.
Right. This is a state of war.
Right.
And literally, I think most of us by now know people who died. And actually, Misako is good friends with Dr. Yasufumi Murakami in Japan. He's the one that's assembled how many millions of records now?
30 million records of shots.
30 million records. And when we have dinner with him and talk with him, it's unbelievable. How many are dead now? How many are dead in Japan, according to his estimates and his team's estimates?
600,000.
Right, that's what he said over dinner.
So in America, for every one that is dead, you have 5 to 10 who are disabled.
Right, and we can see, I don't know what to assign it to, but we can see some behavioral changes. I don't know if it's from that or something else, but we can clearly see as we travel the world, behavioral changes. Like when I go back to the United States, I can see it. It feels different because I've been out of the water long enough. I can go back and there's a contrast.
No, there's definitely it's hard to tell what it's from because there's so many things going on that could contribute to it. But there's definitely a fall in IQs, and there's definitely so during the litigation, I remember a former retired sort of covert guy from the CIA telling me the average IQ in America is 103. He would say, your problem is you don't understand the average IQ is 103. You expect people to be more, advanced than they are. And I still disagree with him about that, but put that aside. Apparently the average IQ is now 98, so that's a drop of 5 points in 25 years. That's a lot.
A war on IQ, whether it's whatever's in the water,
yes,
fluoride,
the EMF, it's all these different things.
All these drugs and alcohol.
Right. And so what you're watching, what I see in America is a significant drop in cognition. You really see, I drive a lot, and you really see it in the driving, and also reports of increased traffic fatalities. And again, it could be the screens, it could be multiple things.
Right.
But there's definitely a real challenge in cognition.
There appears to be actually very obviously a war on IQ. To dumb us down. An Amish farmer once said that, we're being dumbed down. People are being dumbed down.
Right.
Going back to, you said, I guess the biggest issue for this Mr. Globals are who is gonna get in charge of this digital concentration camp. Could you name some of the players? And I wonder, being Japanese, is there any Japanese or Japanese the government is even a player or not?
So, from what I see, the sovereign governments are basically under somebody's thumb. Okay. Part of it is they're in a debt trap. And so they're controlled by the central banks through credit and the need to trade to carry their debt. So that's one force. But you also see enormous physical force implied as well. And increasingly that invisible force, in my opinion, is delivered by invisible technology. So you have technology, weather warfare, that can cause floods, it can cause earthquakes, it can cause tsunamis, it can cause all sorts of what look like natural disasters, but in fact are something else. So we have covert wars going on all over the world. And I think invisible weaponry is a big portion of it.
Mm.
I see. So Japan being surrounded by ocean, and I recall multiple earthquakes and tsunami. We are heavily under attack.
Right. Well, at the end of World War II, the United States left an occupying army in Japan and Germany. In other words, there was a war. The United States won. The countries that lost had occupying armies, and they still do. Germany still has an occupying army. America is still occupying Japan, right? What is not obvious about that? And they have been extracting, the United States has been extracting tribute from Japan and Germany ever since, right? And, they make the claim, the army is in Germany to protect Europe. No, the army is there to extract tribute.
It's interesting, too. Japan has been under the same sorts of, let's say, psychological attacks or let's say, education attacks on being taught that it's virtuous to save in fiat. But the Japanese have no cultural memory of gold anymore. I mean, it's clear. Like most Japanese don't realize you should save in gold. They just don't, like American and Dutch as well. I mean,
although here's my guess, and I don't know Japan well, but you have an extraordinary number of very high quality companies in Japan. And, Japan understands the power of enterprise, especially when combined with applied technology. And so to me, when you look at Japan, just, I run an investment screen company. And when you look at Japanese companies, you realize the Japanese invest in enterprise, and they have great enterprise. And one of the things that tells you how smart they are is you look at the boards, there are no guaylos. It's all Japanese. So they haven't been able to keep you out of, putting troops in, and they haven't managed to keep the central bank, under sovereign control, but they have managed.
Hey, shout out Japan though. She mentioned it at a very convenient time. A very convenient time. And people aren't talking about this, guys. Japan, reverse carry trade, Bank of Japan to test blockchain when they've been testing Ripple's blockchain for 10 years. But you know what? I digress. No one's talking about this, guys. No one even knows this is coming. Shit's getting crazy. Back to the video. Japan's locked in. Japan. I need to go to Japan. For real.
Managed to keep you off the boards of the companies.
What up, John?
It's kind of funny.
Yeah, the cultural aspect of gold, though, is just erased. Just like it is here in Netherlands and across most of the Americans as well.
It's erased.
Not completely erased. I mean, there are some people that know, but the average person here, we've talked with a lot of Dutch over different trips, and they don't seem to be as dialed into gold as like Thai people. If you're in Thailand and you ask a waiter or a waitress what's the price of gold, they're probably going to know within the week or so.
Well, Asia, in Asia, gold is money.
However, not in Japan. And that's what I'm saying. It's been, they first went on a gold standard in Japan in what was that, 1870 something. Anyway, they actually, but gold and silver used to be part of the Japanese mindset. But now, like Thailand, gold is money, right? And Vietnam, of course, Myanmar, India, China, Singapore, of course, Hong Kong, but not Japan. It's been erased.
So here's what's funny. In America, it's also been erased as a holding, but it hasn't been erased as a smoke alarm. All throughout the 90s or 2000s, if I said to somebody, there's a real problem in the economy, they'd say, can't be because the price of gold's not up. So it was very cognizant in people's mind as a smoke alarm, but not as something they wanted to own.
It's been erased, right, through time. And, when I was a child, I remember being taught that it's virtuous to save in fiat. And I remember my father helping me learn how to balance the little, oh, yeah. Yeah. And so you're being taught it's virtuous to eat the cheese in the mousetrap. And that's the way the Japanese have been taught. It's virtuous to save in fiat.
So I look at it very differently. I think especially in a period of inflation, gold and silver, precious metals are great, but you also need liquidity. So I think you need some fiat.
That's true, obviously, but in Thailand, where gold is highly liquid, it's as liquid as honey. Let's say, the fiat, the baht flows a little bit faster than the baht gold. Their weight standard is the baht, actually, by the way, and but you should obviously say you need liquidity, obviously, but in Japan, you're just taught to save only in fiat, no gold at all. I mean, you have to pay taxes to buy gold in Japan.
Right.
Yeah. And you have to fill out paperwork. I mean, it's basically a controlled substance almost, right? It's amazing. It was like that in the United States for quite a while, right?
Right.
So that's one of the brainwashings, obviously, to push you into fiat, is to push you away from gold. Just erase that from your cultural memory.
I think the goal is to push you into fiat. I think the goal is to push you into crypto.
But back when they did it first, it was first to fiat, and now it's over to crypto.
So now it's crypto, and crypto, so I would say real wealth comes from investing in enterprise. So, family wealth came from starting a business that did something productive and building it up. And that's where the majority of family wealth comes. And as much as I love gold, putting gold in a vault, sitting and staring at it, that doesn't create wealth. Building a railroad that really is productive, that creates wealth.
Building a Panama Canal, right?
Building the Panama Canal creates wealth. So I think enterprise is what creates wealth, and that's where I think you get the real multiplication of wealth. Then
Clearly.
Then I think real assets, so land, gold, etc., And what I watched was the push of crypto was basically designed to prototype programmable money, number one. So you want to get your smartest people, especially freedom fighters, prototyping and helping you figure out how to do your control grid, right? So the first step was to get the freedom fighters all prototyping their programmable money. But the second step was then to use it to suck people away from real assets. So so we launched Bitcoin into the financial crisis. If you look at from the financial crisis to 2017, when I looked at the reports, the land ownership of the 100 top landowners, private landowners in America, had doubled. Okay. So Bill Gates is out there buying farmland while they've got, your son or grandson buying crypto, right? And so you're keeping them away from the farmland, and then the central bankers are buying more and more gold, and you're keeping them away from gold. So the whole point of Bitcoin is let's get the smartest young freedom fighters prototyping our control grid from us. And while they do that, let's keep them away from running up the price of the real assets. So literally the most frightening thing, if you look at our SPAC, the wrap up that we wrote on special purpose acquisition companies, you coming into the pandemic, you bubble SPACs and you bubble Bitcoin, right? Pump and dump.
Look, guys, and I know this all sounds crazy. Yes, I think they will pump and dump Bitcoin. I know it sounds crazy, right? There will be benefits of crypto, and the ultimate goal of all this, right, is once you make some money from some crypto, you want to buy some land or you want to buy some property. That's the ultimate goal. They can't make more land. They just can't. And this all sounds a little bit doomy and crazy, but it's not. It's not. This system is going to happen anyway. So you might as well benefit it. You feel me? Hey, don't shoot the messenger.
Help them. And just when the alpha males in the family should be protecting their family from a mass atrocity, they're not. They're in their den trading, dad's trading the SPACs and the stocks, and the son is trading the Bitcoin while everybody in the family is going off and getting poisoned.
Right.
And everybody thinks they're the masters of the universe because they're making money.
What's
it
the
was
special?
Really sad.
But yeah, they're not creating more wealth. They're just
It's quite the opposite. The family wealth is going like this. The family's being depopulated.
Right. Misako?
I would like to, we sort of already talked about it, but I would like to ask you, talk about neural warfare.
Yeah. So, when I was an investment advisor, I was an investment advisor from 2007 to 2018, I ran into one of the major problems I had was that my clients, who were often very wealthy, were targeted with mind control technology to persuade them to invest in things that normally you wouldn't invest in. So it was used to market and persuade people to something that normally they wouldn't do. I suspect, and I don't know, but I suspect a lot of the cyber crime that gets people to, basically turn over their life savings to cyber criminals they use entrainment technology. And so when I saw this, I couldn't persuade my clients. I couldn't talk them out of bad deals unless I helped them understand that this kind of technology is used and can be used to trick them. Because what would happen is when you're a smart person and you're well educated and you're caring, if you resonate with something, you think, then it's good, it's okay. You don't realize that there is, sort of high-tech technology that can be used over the phones or digital communication devices to get you to resonate where you normally wouldn't.
Right.
Okay. And so I had to tell them, look, this stuff exists. And so I did my first interview, I think, pretty early on. It's called Entrainment Technology, Subliminal Programming, and Financial Fraud. And it's basically talks about how you can be, literally you can be tricked into making bad investments using this technology. It's using it for marketing. And we went on for there over time. We just started to collect more and more information. And I had the technology used on me during the litigation, so I knew it existed. I just didn't know a lot about it. And then when I'd studied Enron, I became convinced that they were using it on investment analysts during investment conferences to get them to be enthusiastic about a company and its stock when it wasn't appropriate. So I had seen different applications in what I would call the financial fraud area. And I ended up going, and I tell the story in that first interview of going to a conference and having it used on me, and the whole conference. So
right. So they're not using it just against mom and pop. They're using it against central bankers and big investment advisors and everybody else. Right?
I would say it's, the people at the top understand this stuff exists. I first learned about it when I was on Wall Street. So
understanding that traps exist doesn't stop people from walking right into them.
Right. That's true.
Right.
I've seen a lot of very top people get tricked by this stuff.
Right.
Right. And so I was going to tell you, when I was on Wall Street, what happened to me was I heard two billionaire types talking about entrainment technology and subliminal programming, how it's going to be rolled out. And they didn't use those terms, but, I would describe that, using those terms later. And it scared me to death. I mean, I heard them, and if you can't trust your own mind, you're in real trouble. So that was it for me in TVs. I stopped watching TV. I stopped having a TV. It was a major contention between me and my husband. It's finally one of the reasons to go. It's like, no, I don't want a TV in the house. And then when I went into the administration, I had a decorator who bought me a TV without my permission, put it in the house. She said, Fitz, you can't work in the Bush administration without having a TV. Have to watch the Sunday shows. So when I left, I gave it away. And a couple times I've had to give away TVs that, people try to put them at your house. Oh, you have to have a TV. Anyway, but essentially I have lived without a TV since 1984. And one of the things I discovered in the early 2000s, there was one year when I spoke in every state and about 10 different countries around the world. And every time I would ask the audience, how many people here watch TV? And it was always 10% or less. And that's when I realized, my audience are people who don't watch TV.
Right. We don't watch TV.
Right. And it's amazing how I don't know how I think a lot of it comes in through the sports. Because one of the things you would hear is, we want to get rid of the TV, but one of us wants the sports. They always keep the TV for the sports. And I've become convinced that whether it's Netflix streaming or, the big streaming services or the sports, the big, I just think they are major delivery systems for neurological warfare.
Oh, clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Porn, I think online gambling and porn are huge delivery systems. So I remember reading a survey about 2 years ago. For the 6 months prior, they did a survey. 98% of American men had watched porn. So and especially if you look at who owns the porn systems, I think that's also a huge delivery system.
Another op, right? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it does two things. Porn is a very cheap way, if you can get people to migrate from legal porn to illegal, bam, you've got a control file and you've got it cheap. But you can also deliver porn. Now, I've been on radio shows where they turn on the thing and suddenly I'm getting electronic overlay and I know they're doing it.
How can you sense that they're doing?
Oh, you can feel it. It's suddenly the resonation goes, it's almost like it can almost make you feel dizzy. I've been at a conference where they turned it on.
You are invited as a radio station guest and they turn on something.
And you're in the middle of talking and boom, they turn it on. Or you're in a conference and you're speaking and boom, they turn it on.
Is it acoustic or electronic or what?
I know nothing about, I've had scientists explain how the technology works, but I'm not the person to talk about. We have Great interview. I mean, I would really recommend you listen to Neurowarfare, which is an interview that Elsa von Hamlin just did for us on the Solari report. And we try and find top academic scholars on these topics. And Elsa had found a wonderful doctor who's is a scholar and teaches in North Carolina who did the interview. And he has several books. I have some upstairs if you want to take a look at them.
I would love to. In fact, we talked with Elsa for hours yesterday.
Isn't she great?
She's very serious. Yeah. Highly intelligent.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll be reading her work from now on, actually.
Yes.
Quite a few hours with her yesterday.
Yep.
She's totally tracking.
Yeah. So the whole Solari team said, we can't wait until we get Michael and Masako with Elsa.
Oh, yeah. That was magic. And then we went to dinner with her.
Good. Yeah.
Masako?
Talking about this entrainment technology, I wonder this is one case, but I felt similar vibration twice. And one was when we went to the museum in Rotterdam. It's called Phoenix. No, it was a Rijksmuseum.
Rijksmuseum.
Right?
That's a very typical kind of application where you might have entrainment.
That was quite intense, actually. Yeah.
If all audience happen to visit Netherlands or live in Netherlands, I wanted to try, but maybe it's a trap, so I should not recommend. But when we went inside, it was a very dark room, and the one wall was huge screen, and this man was getting the interview and he talks. But to me, what was most weird was that we feel this vibration very low key, but it just continues.
Could have been entrainment.
Yeah, it was intense.
Right.
It was pretty ugly. You could tell it was brainwashing. I don't know what exactly they were up to, but they were up to something.
That's too bad, because that used to be, in my opinion, one of the greatest museums in the world. So that's too bad.
And one other experience that I had, a similar experience, but different environment. Suddenly, I got a phone call from an unknown, but I thought it's a delivery man, so I picked up. And this same vibration, I can hear it, and it's very quiet, and it's like in a vacuum room, and it's very quiet, but I feel the vibration, and said, "I'm police. You know why I am calling you." Men started to talk to me.
I remember
and
that.
I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he started to try to ask me where I am, or he tries to, in other words, this was a fraud case, I think.
Right. And they're using entrainment to persuade you. Right.
So I felt very uneasy suddenly. So I felt, maybe I should hang up. So I just hung up and then talked to the police officer that I know. And then he was like, "This happens all the time, so don't worry, this is a fraud." But it was the same vibration, I recall.
That's interesting on the vibration.
So I think
part.
a lot of the cybercrime uses this entrainment technology.
That's quite intense. I mean, if they're using that should be considered actual, physical attack.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is.
It is.
Right? It should be considered a physical attack and should be treated as such.
Well, here's the question. One of my favorite books, so if you come to Solari, we have a media collection. I had a group of grandparents complain that their grandkids were just completely addicted to video games and brainwashed.
Right.
And not making any sense. And so I put together a collection of the best videos, books, or our interviews to help them understand, sort of what the technology looks like. Addiction by Design is a very serious scholarly study of how the software in slot machines has been designed to create addiction and basically brainwash you. And literally, the dopamine process creates an addiction. And how the research went on year after year after year after year, so it's a very serious study. And when you see the amount of money that has gone into it and what it does to people, I mean, you're talking about systematically making money by creating addictions that destroy people and families. And you just can't believe it's legal. But when you see how important it is to the profits of the gambling industry, you realize the extent to which this sort of evil has developed and grown.
And the governments are right in with it, right? Clearly.
Yep.
Yeah, we've gone into we don't gamble, but we've gone into quite a few casinos looking at this stuff in different countries. Where have we done that? Singapore?
Singapore. And we tried to go one in Rotterdam or Amsterdam, but we need to pay certain money to enter, and
show your
they need
passport.
Passport and driver's license, so many IDs. So we said, okay, no, thank you. Really consider.
Singapore, they needed passport too, right? But we've been in some other countries as well, and they always have those little pamphlets about if you're addicted, to gambling, these numbers to call and that sort of thing, which I highly doubt is going to help you get out of any system of addiction, right?
Right.
They want to know who is addicted so they can get the rest of your money.
Well, one thing is, to the extent possible, you want to not do business with people who depend on this technology for their profits.
Right.
And from what I can tell, it's been very successful at generating. Imagine what you can do with online shopping with this kind of technology.
Oh, good.
Or online gambling. Right.
Right. It's got to be intense, actually.
Well, I think it's one of the great economic disadvantages of small business is you have large corporations using this to pull market share away from small business who's not using it.
Right.
And all those books and technologies, neural warfare, do you connect this to the completion of the digital concentration camp?
Yes, because this has been unbelievably important at getting people to go along with different aspects of the control grid being built. So I persuade you, one of my favorite lines is, and I think you called these supplied answers, oh, it's inevitable, we might as well go along. It's in the Bible, it's in the mark of the beast in the Bible, it's inevitable. There's nothing you can do, you have to go along. So it's okay for me to go to work and build it. It's okay for me to invest my money in the stocks that are creating it. It's okay for me to just go along and allow myself to be brainwashed, because it's all inevitable and I just need to go along with it, So those are all, part of the trance.
Yeah. The don't rock the boat. Yeah. Yeah. How many times have we heard that? Don't rock the boat. As it goes, steams right over the waterfall.
Well, here's the thing. There are many ways to rock the boat that don't require, if you're a chicken and you don't want to pick a fight, there are many ways to rock the boat without picking a fight. So here's, we have a cartoon. We have regular cartoons on the Solari Report, and we would encourage them to republish them. They're for everybody to use. They're public. So a woman is checking out at the grocery store, and the checkout lady has a little badge that says New World Order on it, NWO. And she looks at the woman with the basket of groceries and said, how would you like to pay, cash or slavery?
Perfect.
Oh, this sticks to my mind. Now I cannot use a suitable card.
So here's the thing. If you just use cash everywhere you go. So you can't implement programmable money unless you go to an all cash, all digital system.
Right.
Right. No leakage. And so the more we take cash back up, the harder it's going to be to implement the digital control grid. So one of the things, we have this huge cash campaign. So we have the 60-day cash challenge, but we have a whole website dedicated to financial transaction freedom with a wealth of resources. And if you click to the resources, we have a section called Team Cash. And we have legislation to help states protect cash, but many, many different ideas of what people can do to encourage cash. So one of the big things started by the Team Cash leader is Cash Halloween, where instead of giving sugar out to kids, because sugar's not good for kids, you give them a dollar bill that's got a little sticker on it, tells them why they ought to use cash.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so your house quickly becomes the most popular house in the neighborhood.
That's proper brainwashing.
and 100 or 200 kids go back home and tell mommy and daddy why they should use cash. Right? That's viral marketing.
In Japan, actually, they still use a lot of cash. Right? Yeah. I love that idea. Yeah.
So another one I always tell people who say, I don't want to, I don't want to do confrontational things politically. So one of the things I always say is, look, Pray. You can always pray. And I had an activist once who called me and said, to keep doing what I'm doing, I need to go public, but I'm a very private person. I'm not comfortable. And I said, well, go get a movie called War Room, which is about spiritual warfare. And I said, get War Room. And if you're led, after you watch it, start a prayer closet and simply battle this spiritually through prayer. And I have no idea what happened, but she contacted me several weeks later and said, oh my God, this shit works. So, anyway, but so praying and cash are two things everybody can do. And there are many, many things. And if you go to our website on financial transaction freedom,
60-day cash challenge. Is it a challenge to only use cash when you're doing transactions?
As much as possible. As much as possible.
I gotta watch that.
So you want to watch Turtling for Cash with Susan Luchas. Every month we do a briefing for state legislators and related activists on what they can do to protect financial freedom. And we have model legislation for both cash and for to stop programmable money, because the states can outlaw programmable money. They can outlaw CBDCs. They can outlaw private programmable money.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to get them to do.
And Trump is trying to make it so that they can't do that, right? Is that accurate or not accurate?
In the summer of 2024, I said I thought the bankers were going to put Trump in because he was the man to get them the control grid. So he was going to be able to use immigration and election fraud to persuade conservatives that they needed a digital ID, they needed biometrics, they needed the control grid. Okay, so what happened was, when the administration started, they were so aggressive. So if you look at these three lines, the surveillance and coercion, the digital ID, and the programmable money, they were so aggressive, so fast on all three lines that I started doing interviews explaining all the different things they were doing to build the control grid, including privatizing all the government federal data for free into AI. And that's, to me, that's what Doge was. It was just a data shifting all the federal or much of the valuable federal data and making it private in violation of a mammoth number of privacy and other laws. But anyway, so the speed at which they were operating and the number of things they were doing was so extraordinary that we started to put together a collection that we've been updating ever since, so that people can see all the different things. And if you just roll down this, there are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things they're doing to build a control grid. And of course, one of the big ones is all the AI data centers. And now Trump has just done an executive order. He's trying to override all local laws and controller power to just steamroll the AI data centers.
Regardless of what it does to their water supply and electricity, right?
From my impression, and I will say this, I've heard some of the administration people, and they talk a really good game about, we don't intend to do programmable money. Well, they just...
Safe and effective.
Exactly. It's the financial equivalent of safe and effective. But if you don't listen to what they're saying, but you look at what they're actually doing, they are building the control grid at high speed.
That's the trick, is just watch what they're physically doing.
Right.
Stop listening to them at all.
Right. They're building, they are racing, and they are going very, very fast. And it's interesting, one of the congressmen there's a brouhaha because Speaker Johnson had promised on the NDAA to have an amendment outlawing CBDC. President had done an executive order saying, okay, CBDC, no CBDC. Now, an executive order is essentially not law. You need, so a group of congressmen had been promised by Johnson that they would take that executive order and roll it into real law in the NDAA. And it wasn't there. And the congressman felt that Johnson had reneged. So he put in an amendment to get it back in, and it was kept out. And the bill was passed with nothing stopping CBDC. And what that tells me is Trump and the administration are protecting the central bank's right to do a CBDC at the very same time, that with the Genius Act, they're creating the vehicle that can institute programmable money through private stablecoins. So, so they're being very careful about optics. But to me, it's full on control grid.
Watching their movements, that's exactly what they're doing. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's important to understand that we're not talking, on one hand, we're talking about a financial coup. So let me show you I just made a new chart on what I call the financial coup, because I want to put a little history to this thing. And we went through this the other night. What happened in the mid-90s, we had at the end of all the fraud during the 80s,
right?
We had a big reform effort. And part of the reform, and I know because I wrote it, was it was basically a series of reforms we instituted at HUD and then helped OMB take them government-wide. But it required the covered agencies.
I want everybody watching this, if you watch this later after this post or whatever happens, to pay very close attention, to what this lady is talking about. She's about to expose the entire game. Honestly, I'm surprised they have not kidnapped her. I hate to say it, but I'm really surprised. She's about to talk some game right now. Listen to this.
Agencies, the top 24 agencies, to produce audited financial statements. So a process began where the government started to...
Also, I would have easily taken the silver for some roof. Yo, give me that silver right now. I'd take that every day, every single time. The only thing I would take over that is XRP itself. Anyway, this lady is about to snap, guys. It's going to go crazy.
Confess that they couldn't produce audited financial statements, but they would explain what their undocumentable adjustments were, which was transactions that weren't documented, that weren't, that made it impossible for them to produce financial statements. The people who ran the financial system tried to come up with a plan to balance the budget, including the retirement, Social Security and retirement. And that led to a big bust up in 1995 when the budget deal cratered. And this event this period was described to me by one of the largest pension fund guys in the country. He said, they've given up on the country. They're moving all the money out starting this fall. He told me that it's in April 96. And that's when enormous amounts of money started to disappear from the federal government. So you're increasing the debt, and then money's disappearing out the back door. So think of the Treasury as a laundry device that's sucking money. The Treasury gives bonds to the pension funds, gets money, the money disappears out the back door. Now the taxpayers are liable to the pension funds. It's just a laundry device, okay? Anyway, so if you look at this chart, what you'll see is by 9/11, there was trillions of dollars missing from HUD and DOD. DOD is the big one. And in fact, Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, stood up and said, the DOD is missing $2.3 trillion. It's worse than terrorism. It's a greater national security threat than terrorism. Of course, we know what happened with 9/11. The Patriot Act passes. But money keeps going missing until finally in 2015, $6.5 trillion was missing. And Dr. Mark Skidmore, who's a budget expert professor at MSU, heard me talking about it and said, oh, she has to be wrong. That's impossible. The Army can't be missing, many multiples of its budget in 1 year. Well, actually, if you look at how the federal credit is managed, it can be. And so he called me. He went to the financial statements and discovered I was right. And he called me, and as a result, he did a complete survey that was finished in 2017. And he and his students, I had the number up to 12 trillion missing. He found another 9 trillion. And so 21 trillion as of 2017. Guess what the outstanding debt of the United States was when he published his report? 21 trillion. So imagine, if you think it's a scam, we use debt to issue the currency when we could just issue the currency without debt. It's really a scam when the money you raise with the debt disappears out the back door. Right?
Yeah. So, as the other gentleman mentioned, it would be impossible to do this hidden unless they had high cover. How can you steal $21 trillion?
It's no brainer. All you have to do is issue 21 trillion in treasuries and you finance it. And then you steal it.
So somebody somewhere made a physical decision. Who's that person? Who's that
There
committee?
should be a transfer record too.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So if you go back to this chart, in 1993, Jeffrey Epstein made his first visit to the Clinton White House, arranged by Bob Rubin, who was the Secretary of Treasury when the money started to go missing. Okay. And at the time, he was National Economic Advisor. I believe Jeffrey Epstein ran the SWIFT system on the missing money. It's my guess what he was up to. And the sex was just part of creating related control files that they used.
Right.
But in 1994, the New York Fed and the Fed, which had been members of the BIS from the beginning, had taken the position that being a shareholder was conflict of interest, and they reversed that position. In 1994, they bought shares in the BIS. And, my guess, this is a guess, I think, the BIS has sovereign immunity and can move money and hold it on its balance sheet in secrecy behind sovereign immunity. And I think the perfect way to launder this money would have been through Fed to the BIS, is my guess. But there are thousands. If you look at the ways that they could have laundered this money out, it's like the joy of cooking. There are hundreds of recipes. And with 21 trillion, you need many different ways. For example, my guess is Enron was one of the laundromats. But I think also, if you look at the money disappearing, then suddenly you have all these sovereign nations around the world who are making huge donations to the Clinton Foundation. And my question is, did that money just get pulled out of HUD, move through the BIS over to Norway, and they just give it back?
Flood right back.
With a fee?
Easy.
Okay, so anyway, whatever. We hit the great financial crisis, and then we have 29 trillion of bailouts. So we have 21 trillion of missing money from the U.S. government, and now we have 29 trillion bailouts. That's $50 trillion. Okay, so we're talking about putting the United States in a debt trap, and somebody walks off with $50 trillion. Okay, now there are many. We could have a long conversation about where that money might have gone, but one of the things to understand is coming into 2019 in the pandemic, because you have, instead of putting the retirement systems on a stable foot, you've decided instead you're going to give up on the country and you're going to take the money and run. It's like a bank robbery. But now the retirement systems are coming due. What are you going to do? And it's pretty clear what happened next. The first thing they did was they got rid of Epstein. That's the second thing they did was they reviewed the going direct reset, and they started into a reset, a central banking reset. And that reset dramatically lowered life expectancy, which had been dropping ever since 1997 when the financial coup started. But this is all part of, you put the government in a debt trap, you've moved all the money out someplace else, and those assets and that money is someplace else. So now the government doesn't have the assets. It's got, but it owes the debt. You now have it in a debt trap. And now essentially what you do is you turn around to the population, say there's no money, but you weaken the population dramatically and you start depopulating.
Right. It's a perfect crime.
Oh, so they steal the money and they cannot pay the people pension, so they kill people.
So, yeah, and they're doing many things, because remember, part of what they're doing is they're doing inflation. So rather than cut the benefits, they just inflate them away, and inflation is part of that. But yeah, and what you've also done is you've weakened the population. I mean, if you've ever seen a mother of a vaccine-injured child with severe neurological damage, they don't have time for political activism. They're taking care of a child who at the age of 20 still needs diapers, right? They're overwhelmed.
Right. And so whatever spare money she's got's probably going into medical, that sort of thing.
Right.
Totally vacuuming out their wealth.
Right, but it also destroyed the family. Most of those families end up in divorce.
It's like a missile coming through the window. Right. Interesting. Yesterday in the news was news of another former famous actor and his wife killed possibly the suspect as their drug addict son. These sorts of things happen all the time, right? It just never ends.
Well, it's funny. Because you were here, I was inspired to make a list of all the tactics I could think of that are part of the great poisoning, targeting families and weakening them. And I hadn't realized, I hadn't sit down and made one master list for a long time. And it went on, it was 3 or 4 pages.
It's huge.
And when you look at all the different items under narcotics and drugs and pharmaceuticals, it was extraordinary.
It is. It's so, and we probably only know some small fraction because they can obviously just feed stuff through the supply chains are completely weaponized.
Right.
I mean, from top to bottom.
Right.
Yeah. And I actually took my cards off of, let's say, the huge book company that everybody knows its name online. I just took my cards off recently. I'm not even going to do business with them anymore.
So I've dramatically reduced it, but I'm not 100% out. I've dramatically reduced it.
I'm like huge amounts of camera gear and everything else over the years. I'm just done with them.
Right.
Right. It's amazing the danger of a weaponized supply chain. I mean, for instance, you publish something they don't like and you order something from one of those companies and it comes to you poisoned. That's simple. That's very simple.
Right.
Takes no gymnastics to do that.
Right.
We saw what happened with the pagers and that sort of thing, with Israel blowing up pagers and that sort of thing.
So if you look at a lot of
we used those types of radios, by the way, in the Darien Gap. ICOM, the type that they use to weaponize and blow those guys up, that's the type they're actually satellite radios. They're actually radios that go to the satellite. And so you program, anyway, the bottom line is, we don't use those anymore either.
Well, I think one of the greatest dangers is you have now governments deeply dependent on corporate contractors who are very dangerous. And I can refuse to do business with a company, but I can't refuse to comply with all sorts of government regulations. And what we need to know is that data is not going into the government, it's going into the government contractor. And those government contractors weaponize that data in a lot of different ways. And it's not secure. And the privacy laws, in my opinion, are not trustworthy in terms of enforcement.
They're irrelevant.
Right.
The laws are irrelevant. They don't pay attention to laws.
Right. It's very funny. I was meeting with a wonderful, brilliant, very capable guy who was talking about why his state should do a digital ID system. And I said, oh, really? And are you going to use private corporations to manage the data or do any part of the system? And they hadn't realized how dangerous it was.
Right.
Right.
It's completely weaponized. The whole supply chain. So we have to always assume anything that you deal with, it can be come to you, could be tampered with.
Right.
Right. Misako?
When we think about the ways that we can protect ourselves and the society from this huge scheme of totalitarianism, what are the number one thing that Mr. Global hates from us doing?
That he hates us doing?
Yes.
That's a great question.
Yeah. So I would say what he hates more than anything is when we understand that our success depends on cooperation, and sharing. So when we act, when we can differentiate between who's a good guy and who's a bad guy, and then we act with love and cooperation and generosity with all the other good guys, that drives him crazy. So he's very happy when we behave in criminal ways. And because it's amazing. It is righteousness and generosity and love which advances civilization when done in a practical and effective way. So I think you were showing me the matrix of the box with the whys. When highly competent and ethical people get together and cooperate effectively, that cannot be allowed. And of course, that's what we at Solaria spend all of our time thinking about how to do.
Right. To get the right people sitting at the right tables and figuring out solutions to things. And like you say, the Dutch don't want to hear complaints. They want to hear solutions.
Right. And a lot of it is understanding the solution is not going to come from government. So
no way.
But I do a lot of work with people who are in state legislators who are getting a lot done and are very effective. So I believe in getting done as much as you can get done in government. I don't believe in walking away. But if we're going to have a real revolution, it's got to come virally. We've got to change how we spend our time, who we spend our time with, how we spend our money. So if you look at the control grid, we're going to work in building it. If you look at who's financing it, if you look at our savings, we're investing in the companies that are doing it. We're shopping at the companies that do it. We have the ability to walk away. Boycotting and shunning is the single most effective political tactic in the history of mankind.
Boycotting and shunning is very effective. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why are we admiring these people?
Right.
I go crazy when and in fact, I've been censored on radio shows. I'm not allowed to say anything negative about Elon Musk. It's like, why would I want to say anything negative about somebody who wants to put a mesh network in the back of my head and hook me up to a satellite?
You mean the dope head, Elon Musk, right? I mean, seriously, the guy was smoking dope with the other doper, Joe Rogan.
Well, Titus and I believe that there's like 30 Elon Musks. It's an operation.
It could be, because he's clearly, listen, the math doesn't add up. You're a banker. How many hours are there in a month to do all these things and be on dope, right? I mean, it just doesn't add up.
The whole thing.
You've started a company. I've started a company. I know how much time and effort that takes. That's like adopting 10 baby elephants.
Right.
And yet he has time to be a doper and do all these shows. It's clearly an op.
So I think the thing that baffles me the most, and I appreciate the neurowarfare, but we are watching an interesting bifurcation in America. Because if you look at the most recent polls, one of the political forces in America for a long time has been the Israeli lobby. And you have a lot of legislators and government officials who are dual citizens with very serious conflicts of interest. And what we've watched in the Middle East now is what I call a real estate development. So Witkoff and Kushner just were on CBS and admitted that the master development plan has been in place for 2 years. So, which means that when they decided where they were going to bomb, they knew where they wanted to clear, right? So the problem, I see is that and I'll come back to the United States now, this is not Japan. The American taxpayer is basically financing a real estate development that's one of the worst plunder operations we've ever seen in the world.
It's clear. And if you look at Google Earth, I've not seen anybody else say this, what I'm telling you now, but I've looked at Google Earth at Gaza quite a lot. Of course, they can, screw with those images because we look at places that we go look sometimes and they're not exactly accurate. But or they're always covered with clouds. but in Gaza, crystal clear imagery, and you can see a huge amount of it is clearly absolutely flattened, and they're using you can see the tracks, like tank tracks or whatever, just running over what. But then there'll be little patches, like a patch of trees in a house that's just not messed up and everything around is destroyed, right? They left those nice trees, whatever they are, whatever.
The master development plan.
Somebody must have said, don't mess with that house. That's my, I want that one.
The master development plan preceded the bombing.
Right.
So, and what we're watching is more and more people realizing, okay, COVID was a mass atrocity.
Right.
We're now watching a process I would describe as a Holocaust or a real estate development plan.
It's obviously a Holocaust.
Right. You can't let that go on. You can't let that, we've gone past the line of, here's civilization and here's the end of civilization. One of my favorite quotes is from a guy named Michael Ventura. He says, we all live in the South Bronx now because the South Bronx is proof that American civilization can't stop. And if it does, there's nothing you can do about it. So we are all contemplating, we are watching whether it's the Gaza redevelopment plan, the Ukraine redevelopment plan, because Witkoff and Kushner are basically negotiating both. So we're talking about international diplomacy is now basically real estate development. And it comes with enormous surveillance technology, panopticon assassinations and Holocaust.
Right.
And we're all watching that. And the question is, what do we do about it? Because we have to do something about it. You can't let that continue, because then you're talking about a form of disintegration. The economy depends on the rule of law. And if you have a complete disintegration of the rule of law and nobody can trust anybody or anything and everything's weaponized, then you've got a real spiral down.
The only rule of law that's left is laws being used to rule us. Because clearly the people that should be administering the law don't apply it to themselves.
No, there's another rule of law.
Law of the jungle.
And that rule of law is the rule of law by which I conduct my business and my interactions with other people.
Oh, that's in our circles, our own moral law.
Right. But that's why if we can build circles that can bring the law, that's where the power will come.
I think it's readily doable because there's a lot of people that are thirsting for that, like we are, right? Because Rambo is a movie. In real life, we have to operate as teams and tribes and that
and
sort of thing.
And we have to bring the law.
Absolutely.
And
internally.
We have to respect the law among ourselves because the only culture that can pull us out of this and lead us out of this is one that is committed to right action. So I call it right relationship. But, if we're watching a spiral down of people promoting a demonic culture, and we can't go there. We have to go to a divine culture. We have to go to the rule of law. Now, that doesn't mean that if we are threatened by somebody acting outside the rule of law, we can't defend ourselves. Believe me, I'm a gun owner. I'm the first to defend myself. But we have to be the bringers of the law because they are the destroyers of the law.
Right. Basically, the law of the jungle is how they operate.
Right. And as an American, I believe in the Constitution, and I believe that the Constitution presents a spiritual covenant that Americans have with each other. And I don't care what the demonic guys do to rip it up. They can't destroy it. Only we can destroy it. It's our commitment to the spiritual covenant that is what is powerful.
Masako, I know you have something to say.
Oh, I know you're busy and you took time for us. So I would like to conclude with one question. You have so many stories of in your career and you're still fighting. What have you motivated the most? I cannot imagine how much stress or attack from this big thing came after you, but you're strong and you're giving hopes to others. What are the things, maybe some quotes that you like, or the book you like, or experience somebody gave you a word, or what makes you strong?
So I see what's possible. I see, I think I understand what's economically possible. I understand what's financially possible. I understand what's spiritually possible, you know, and I'm Christian. Christians are called to bring heaven to earth. And that's our responsibility. And to me, I can see it. I can see how possible it would be. First of all, this is a beautiful planet. I mean, it's just, you travel all over the world, so you see how amazing and beautiful it is. And if you look at our history, you've seen the extraordinary things that we're capable of as a, you know, that the human race is capable of. So I see and I can feel our possibility. And, you know, and I kind of see what's going on now as kind of a, I don't know, it's like watching an Animal House movie. It doesn't have to be like this.
No, it doesn't.
Right. But I have had to come to accept that I'm only one person. So I can do everything I can to contribute to be part of an advanced civilization, but I can't stop everybody else from choosing a primitive one. And this comes down to the choice. Are 8 billion people going to choose to build a advanced civilization, or are they going to choose to, fall apart and dissolve into a primitive one? I see what's possible, and I have no interest. You know, I decided very early on, just because I had the misfortune of being born into a primitive culture, that I didn't have to be primitive. I could choose to be something else.
Right.
And that's what we can do. We can all choose to be the thing we want to live in. Right.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Michael, you want to say something in the end, or?
Oh, we hugely thank you for inviting us to Netherlands. When you made the invitation, we literally cleared some schedule and flew here.
Okay, well,
that's pretty rare. It's hard to get us on airplanes. Very difficult, actually. Although we're on airplanes occasionally, we resist it.
Okay, well, we're delighted you come. Hopefully you'll spend a little bit more time here. Yep. We'd love for you to, the Solari team, I have to brag on them. They're an amazing group of people, and you've met some, but there are a lot more.
Yeah, this is an intensely interesting group and very intelligent.
So I don't know if you've ever heard one of my taglines. I used to always use on Money and Markets. I said, "Don't ask if there's a conspiracy. If you're not in one, you need to start one." So now we are an open conspiracy.
Right.
But
well, not to commit crime though. So that's the difference.
Well, but here's the thing. I grew up in the establishment, and we felt responsible to build the future.
Right.
And we built the future with transactions.
Mm-hmm.
The way you built the future is this project or this project, and everything's a transaction. Right. And they were all conspiracies. Now, that didn't mean they were illegal, but everybody knew you had to keep it quiet. You had to sneak around. You had to put it together. You had to get it done, because otherwise somebody would make money trying to stop you, right?
Right.
So everything was a conspiracy. And I grew up believing the conspiracies were wonderful.
Mm.
I never, it's like, conspiracies is how you build your future. It's how you gather and organize and implement power. So conspiracies were wonderful things. I didn't know conspiracy was bad. And when I got booted out of the establishment, I started hearing negative things about a conspiracy. I was like, you're talking yourself into being powerless. How are you going to build your future unless you're great at conspiracies and embrace them and love them?
Right.
Right? So I
make conspiracies great again.
There we go. All right. We're in cahoots.
So we got a great saying, great conspiracy. Wait,
make conspiracies. Wait a minute. It's make conspiracies great again. MCGA.
Makka. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Masako. This is such a pleasure.
Thank you very much. And please, everybody, subscribe to Solari Report. There are so much that we didn't cover, and the Solari team is working very hard to give us a chance to see the real world is instead of official reality. So let's continue learning. Thank you very much.
what a fantastic talk, I think. What was her name again? Catherine Fitz. I will continue to look into her, but this was an amazing conversation. I don't think I've ever heard anyone really break it down like this. But she pretty much proved it, guys, right in front of you guys. Epstein has helped launder trillions of dollars out of our financial system, and our taxes go to God knows what, right? And I think this is a very good educational talk to listen to. I'm happy I have documented it, and I think it fits well with the current narrative that is going on in the war. Japan, they touched on that a lot. They touched on the digital ID system, and it was really good to listen to. But that shit is crazy. I'm not gonna lie, it's crazy, guys. So where do we go from here, right? I want to just quickly see what the public is saying about the war very quickly. And while that's going on, while I'm getting my drink of water and stuff, I'm gonna show you guys something that I was looking into the other day that fucking blew. It was me and my buddy. We're both very conspiracy heavy. Bro is an OG, like he's an OG noticer. All right, he taught me about like the Loose Change movie, all this stuff that was going on, right? And we were looking into some stuff, and we discovered, I think we discovered a crazy conspiracy. Not really, but it has to do with 9/11, and I just have to share it with you guys because I don't know. I'm sure people have talked about it before, but it gets pretty deep. So we'll listen to the people react to the war, get kind of caught up on that very quickly. But amazing talk by Catherine Fitz, and it positions you well for the new financial system coming, guys, because it's coming, and that's the truth. And if you leave with truth, you leave with a good heart, you will be in a good spot, guys. So quick look at the market. Who cares? All right, let's go ahead and take a look, see what people are saying about this, guys.
Those admirals literally get briefings. I've done daily briefings with the 4 stars, and this was in the submarine community. And that admiral would look at me when it was my turn to present my presentation to them. They want straight facts.
Breaking news. Sorry, Andrew. Breaking news. Several explosions heard in Dubai and Manama. Several explosions heard in Dubai and Manama. That is breaking news. And this has been confirmed by French publications. So let me just put this breaking. Several explosions heard in Dubai and Manama. Let me see what else we've got. The attack on Dubai. Explosions heard in Manama, Dubai, and Kuwait. The attack on Dubai will be carried out by drones. And then there is several explosions heard in Dubai. Obviously, we'll try and get you the news as and when we can. In terms of any updates. But several explosions heard. Let me also see what
I want
else
everyone to
we've
keep in
got.
mind too, guys. They're starting to actively censor missile hits, missile strikes, and just a lot of stuff happening with this war to keep the truth from coming out. And I want everyone to understand that we in America have already lost over 1,000 troops.
Israel
probably.
is bombing Beirut, Lebanon really hard as well. Israel is bombing Beirut, Lebanon quite hard.
Israel is currently bombing Beirut and Lebanon.
Oh, that's my one page. Let me see here. 1 second. Dubai are trying to play it down. They're trying to say, oh yeah, something did hit, but it was minor and there was debris. But yeah, they've been hit. Was there explosions? Explosions in Dubai. What else? Okay. Explosions heard in Dubai. Let me see what else we've got. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at the same time as I'm speaking to you guys. That's why. Okay, here we go. U.S. confirmed 12,000 aerial bombs are going to Israel. The U.S. Department confirms that a possible sale to Israel for the purpose of munitions has been approved. Israel is carrying out interceptions attempted for drones, but they failed. So yeah, that's the latest news on that. Let's go to Silver Sailor. Silver Sailor, how's it going? Give us your thoughts.
Hey, shout out to Sully Man from the land of the rising sun. We love you, brother. But I'm here to
I
back
love
up my
Japan, bro. I love Japan. It's so
absolutely.
awesome.
Yes, I've lived my whole entire adult life here, 18 years old till today,
Where do you live? Where
brother.
do you live in Japan without doxing yourself?
I would just say Yokohama region.
I've never been. I've been to like Nara, and I've been to Kyoto, obviously, and I've been to what's the other one? I've been to a few others.
Osaka or
Sorry,
Osaka, where Ryan's
Osaka
lives
and
about.
Tokyo. Yeah, I've been them for, but I've not. But yeah, this is. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Silver.
Okay, yeah, I want to back up my fellow IT Joel and the veterans that have actually pushed the buttons and as communicators. When I joined the Navy, back in the 90s, the communication rating was called radioman. And then in the 1990s, they changed our rating to information systems technician, IT, right? So we are the guys that load the radios, the networks, the tactical EHF SATCOM platforms for all these communications. So we have a saying, you can talk about us, but you can't talk or launch aircraft ordnance without us. So this is a direct assault to Manco. He needs to shut his mouth and stop telling these veterans that actually did the job how we do our jobs. He needs to be quiet. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Silver Sailor. Appreciate your views. Let's go to I am Shah. I am Shah. Go ahead, jump in.
Hi, Suleiman. Thank you for covering all of this. I've been listening to you for the last 7 days. You guys are doing tremendous job. And I have a question. Will the GCC countries expel the US military bases in future? How this going to look like? And I also noticed that this Zionist regime is very frustrated and they are bombing Lebanon very badly as they can't do much in the Iran side. That's what I noticed. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it. White, give us your thoughts.
Hello, guys. First, thank you for being here. Especially to the listeners, the hosts, of course, but especially the listeners. People that want to pay attention and caring enough to sit here along with you guys and ask those hard questions. And you know what? Here's what I keep coming back to. We have active wars right now, killing thousands of people every month. And I have to ask, who actually benefits? You know, the Epstein files, partially released. We got 50,000 now coming out, yesterday, including allegations about Trump. It showed a network connecting intelligence, billionaires, political leaders. And this is a uniparty. It's not a theory, court documents. And all the research points back to long dynasties of families. And you guys know exactly who I'm referring to, especially banking families. And these people have disproportionate control over central banks, over government financing, and ultimately over citizens and everyday people. There's literally documentation of Committee of 300. Literally, there's stories in real research about the Bavarian Illuminati. So this is my question. Are these just business decisions, regardless of who wins? And what do we owe each other? If you look to the left and right when you walk out of your house, these aren't your enemies. These aren't people that we need to organize and form against. So my thing is, what's the strategy? What do we do for visible protest, not rage? And instead of going to loot and break in and put some fire to stores and whatnot, how about we go and organize at the Federal Reserve? We know the institutions that are doing all of this. So my question is, what's the plan?
What do you mean by what's the plan?
Revolution is the only
The
answer, guys.
strategy,
Revolution.
the formulation for the people? Because I heard somebody mention that they're a populist earlier, and he says, "Hey, I don't care what color you are. It's so important that uh, the population comes together and has a word over these probably under 6,000 people, 10,000 people. So, what would be a good strategy? How do we start to make our voices heard?
Yeah. I mean, the best thing is to highlight a lot of the propaganda that they do, to expose it, to pressure your governments to change their views and minds on what they're doing.
I just released a video on YouTube, and so the upload process was kind of giving me.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's that. H, do
Do
you want
you?
to jump in? Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, please.
Hey guys, I'm just reading reports that an American military cargo plane traveled from the US and stopped at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, a major logistics and coordination center for US forces in Europe. This is to the cargo was carrying interceptor missiles for the THAAD system. So obviously that we've been speaking here on your space, Salman, about the interceptor system being depleted. Andrew, we discussed it a lot yesterday. So it looks like they're rushing to replenish that because obviously Israel needs to, have it. They need the Iron Dome to be intercepting the missiles that are coming towards them. So that just landed in Germany. I'm not sure if you've seen that, Solomon.
So what's happened again? Sorry, say it again.
So this report is saying an American cargo plane traveling from the US has just stopped at an airbase in Germany, Ramstein, which is a major logistical and coordination center for the US in Europe. The plane then continued to Nevatim Air Base in Israel. So that is obviously to replenish the missiles for the THAAD system.
That's crazy. So does it actually say STAD systems, or
It
is
says
that
THAAD
something you've?
system. It says the THAAD system. I'll send you the
Oh my
statement.
God, we said that, didn't we? We said that they'd be getting these TADs from Europe, but this quickly. That's more evidence that they're running out.
I'll send you the statement.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be awesome. Okay, let me just Joel, just coming back to you. Just on that, do you want to just elaborate why they would redeploy the THAAD systems?
Did you know? Do you know what aircraft it was that supplied it?
She said 17, I think. Did you? Hey, HK, you said C-17, right?
I'm just resetting the thing. 1 second, but do continue.
Hey, Andrew, let me bring it back up. It said, let me just quickly read the statement. The cargo it carried consisted of interceptor missiles for the THAAD system. You know what that means? What was this? What was the question
Is
that you
that
were
a
asking?
C-17 cargo?
It just
It's
says
not going to be just one.
the cargo is carried consisted of just says interceptor missiles for the THAAD system. It doesn't
One.
say anything about C-17.
Okay. need a lot more information to really determine that. But at least, well, what we're hearing is they're resupplying like mad. They're going to be, I'm sure, many flights pouring in. The whole system takes more of a flight, from what I understand. But yeah, see, we're playing catch up here. That had to be forward surged, and that the surge was never there, so they're going to be resupplying like crazy. Get
I think
playing
did
catch
Trump
up.
also rush in like some more funding to Israel? I thought I saw something as well just before. Let me just. Have you seen anything about that? Extra funding to Israel for more
Yes, we've
supplies?
been talking about that for days now, but that's a great point, HK. Yeah, of course. Here again, we see Israel draining our funds, draining us financially, and they want more blood and they want more money. I'm tired of it.
So Joel, yeah, do you want to elaborate on what would be the reasoning why someone would want to, what you call it, why they would need to get the THAADs so soon, if there was the THAADs?
Oh, you're asking why they would want to
Yeah.
resupply it so quickly?
Yeah, because you would assume they've not run out this quickly.
Yeah, it's shocking because that is one of their main defense against these strikes, and if they're already shipping it from the CONUS United States on these C-17s, that just means that they're trying to do it very fast and in a way that's almost it almost is desperate because normally what you wouldn't the C-17 is the backbone, but it's the one airplane that you can just spin up real fast and go. Normally, you'd use a bigger cargo plane if you'd want to just really, if you had time and you weren't in a panic, right? Because if you're the enemy and you see they're just trying to fly C-17s as fast and as often as possible, it just if you're an enemy and you're looking at that from a image perspective, you're just like, wow, they must be very desperate.
And again, I have to repeat, Sully, I repeat over and over again, there was no pre-positioning search that we even close to what we saw in Desert Storm, the first wars. So if we're taking on a far greater, more complex threat, why did we never see the pre-positioning and everything? And they said they were, and I'm sure we know those warehouses and all those storage facilities there in the GCC, all of those, the Gulf Emirates, all the countries like Dubai, all those small nations. Yes, but the Iranians have taken those out. Those have been blasting and blasting for days. They weren't blasting people there. I know there was some. There was. I'm not saying there were no casualties. They're going for the logistics. Logistics is key, and that's what they've been slowly decimating for days now. 7 days of blowing up all the logistics. So yeah, that's going to be crucial.
Just speaking of decimating, Andrew, you make a good point there because we're seeing right now Israel is quite literally carpet bombing Beirut because the Lebanese resistance, Hezbollah, is not letting them make any progress through the south. You know, we saw today, like the moment they tried to fight on the ground, they were infiltrated straight away with that failed operation where the 4 helicopters tried to enter through the east, through the Bekaa. These sociopaths, these genocidal killers, are skilled only in killing women and children. We're seeing that their targets in Iran is mostly civilians, it's civilian sites. It's quite ironic that where they're bombing in Iran is, you know, your liberal areas, the people who would most likely, if anything, be more liberal in thinking, who would be potentially, if anything, would be the ones who are open to a new government. They're the ones that are being bombed as opposed to in the rural areas. And in Lebanon, they are carpet bombing civilian buildings. If you actually look at the videos of where they're bombing, it's civilians. There's no Hezbollah there. The poor people that are coming out and speaking in Arabic and they're saying that their children are under the rubble. They're being buried for the last 2 days, saying we don't have any weapons here. We're civilians. We're people. We're Lebanese people. Why are you bombing us? But just like you said, Andrew, that's all they can do. They cannot fight on the ground. They rely on their air power, and so they're a cowardice army.
Absolutely, absolutely. In 1981, 82, for nearly a year of my life, I was in Beirut, Lebanon. One of the most horrific things I've seen in my life. I'll never get it out of my mind. The smells, that beautiful city. They call it the Paris of the Mediterranean, because of the same thing. The IDF, that beautiful city, was obliterated. It looked like Gaza, and the people were. I was broken. They were so resilient. They're like, we don't have a problem with you Americans, okay? And we know, but we were not allowed to even talk about the IDF. And I'm supposed to interview Ryan Dawson here, but I want to talk about those quote little graves that we can't talk about. And you know what I'm talking about there, Mr. IDF Incorporated, and the war criminal Netanyahu needs to be hung up. And they keep saying, no, the great evil empire of Iran. No, Netanyahu needs to be strung up and hung on gallows. They have blood on their hands, all of them, and they're just wicked, wicked. But you're right; they were killing innocent men, women. Why do you think the United States Navy was sent there, and our Marines, our powerful Marine amphibious unit, which shut that down quick? Once our Marines showed up, they shut that crap down. The little weasels, they
Thanks for
scare me
tuning
back
in,
in their
John.
little
Catch you later,
holes.
brother.
And the United States Marine Corps, we took the Beirut airport, and what happened? Our Marines were dug in there. I was with the Marines there, and I used to resupply them. And we went there, and we heard these shots coming at us. And the gunny sergeant said, "Yeah, there's some crackpot taking crack shots at us." But whatever, it was very dangerous. They moved the Marines out of the barracks, out of their underground bunker system, and said, "No, we're going to put the Marines in barracks." And the Marines are like, "We want to stay here," against their orders. And I want to know how that happened. We know how it happened. They need more blood. These Luciferian elite bastards need more blood, and they killed 300 some Marines. I buried my son. I buried another great man and his beautiful little wife and children. The woman looked at me and she said, "Why?" And she's a Mexican woman. Of course, they're going to take the blacks and the Mexicans and the poor white, and they're going to say, "Hey, go die on that altar to Baal." That blood
Exactly.
sacrifice.
Exactly. That's exactly what we see going on, and I can see the plot even further down the line being them fleeing to Israel and pointing the weapons to America, and if that has to happen because of this America First movement, right? That they're trying to do, and saying, hey, well, we're going to go ahead and look at those APAC contracts. We're going to look at all the different government contracts and say, okay, well, these NGOs are being funded over to Israel, and if that happens, then that's literally going to trigger that Samson option, right? And we're seeing that the black people, the white people, the Mexicans are coming together because we're saying, hey, what? Wait a minute, we forgot. We have just been woken up out of this nightmare that we've been seeing around us. They're doing what to children? Oh, they control everything down to even the video games. Install micro purchases so that they begin spending money at young ages. The extraction has begun for us from ground zero, from 0 day. For them, over the last hundreds of years, thousands of years, and we see that it's not a joke anymore. It's in our face, uh, and them trying to get to Iran is not going to happen. Iran has some of the best weapon systems that are buried. So it's going to force a ground invasion that's going to be failed. Uh, it's amazing to see what's going on today, and I really hate to hear that. I really do.
So just in terms of breaking news, I just wanted to expand. I think Suleiman said before that Bahrain and Dubai were hit by Iranian missiles. It looks like Saudi Arabia, the US bases in Saudi Arabia are now under attack. So that's now UAE, Jordan, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and I believe also Iraq. And of course, we can see that sirens are also sounding in Tel Aviv and in other occupied areas in Israel.
Yeah, HK, I just want to go back to your comments about the supplying. If America did have the supplies to reinforce properly, they'd be sending C5s instead of C-17s. And I'm saying that just because it carries more weight, but also like um, it'd be a waste of money to use C-17s if you could just pack everything in C5s, and you'd see C5s, which are C5 Galaxies, the biggest cargo plane besides I think the one Russian has. Um, so yeah, and that's also another comment. Another comment I want to make is the reports. I know they probably talked about it yesterday with the bases that are shut down, the hospitals that are not taking deliveries or suspending their services in Germany and some in Florida, because these are the bases that the men and women from the United States they go to for triage, and if they get hurt, well, some of those hospitals in Germany and in Florida, they're shut down, and there's no cover on why. When they ask you, "Hey, why are these hospitals shut down?" They're not saying anything. But I know from experience, and I know Andrew knows, that's where our men and women go whenever they're injured in the Middle East.
And look at Dover. Dover Air Force Base is the military's morgue. They brought in a $500,000 contract to bring in more morticians. We're going to be sending bodies home. And when Americans, it's not six people, folks. I was in I'm not going to keep repeating myself. I was unfortunately, in the terrorist attack, and it's a miracle, God's hand, that I wasn't killed. But they kept saying, "Oh, 1, 2 sailors were killed." No, it was 10 or so. I think it was 10. I'm so sorry. It was over at least 10, but I don't know if some of the severely wounded lived or not. I haven't followed back up on it, but over 20 some wounded. Nope, media never heard anything about it. You never hear anything about it. Well, it happened, and yeah. So the numbers are never what you think they are, because why? When Americans see bodies coming home, do you think they're going to be happy about that? And they're going to say, "Ask me what my son asked me." Why? When that young woman, 20 years old, with 2 children, and now her husband's dead, they shot him in the face 3 times with an AK-47 in Ramadi, Iraq. You know what she said? Why? Yeah, I had to lie, of course. I'm not going to tell her the truth. So I said, well, in service of his country, ma'am. And that bothered me so much. It's still to this day. Why didn't I just tell her the truth? Yeah, I'm done. And now what am I saying I'm done? I'm not playing this game anymore. I lost friends of mine. They've said, you sound like Hamas. Well, okay. Fine. And you're not American. And one good old boy redneck told me I need my ass kicked and shipped out of the country. Why? Because I'm speaking the truth. I don't care anymore. I speak out, speak out, speak out, speak out, and I do not vote. And of course, for local council here in the city for property taxes, okay, we'll go vote. But are you kidding me? For federal election, it's a rigged system. I stopped voting in 1972, Richard Nixon. We saw the same rug pull in Vietnam. Yep, I can go on an hour now. I'm going to shut up. But yeah, don't vote, people. Please don't vote in federal elections unless we find, and I want to say Anthony Aguilar, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, a great man who has moral courage, who stood up and said no. With the man had 20 combat tours and special forces, Green Beret. And when he went to Gaza for 2 months in a humanitarian on a contract, the guy could be wealthy, rich, filthy rich. And he was in 2 months in Gaza, and it wrecked him. This great man, I'm not worthy to shine his shoes, personally told me it wrecked me. I'll never get it out of my mind. And he was threatened. His family was threatened by these God makes America great, good old boys who are in this kingdom dominion theology where we got to, PX at them. No. Anthony says, no, I'm done. So if you're going to vote, go vote Green Party with, I'm not promoting Green Party, but I'm promoting Anthony Aguilar in North Carolina. I'm just saying, and I want
Just
to
some
lift up
breaking news.
ASAPAC.
Sorry, Andrew, thanks. Just some breaking news. There is Iranian missiles over the center of Israel moments ago. There are Iranian missiles over the center of Israel moments ago. We are hearing sirens across Israel at the moment, sirens sounding in Tel Aviv. right now. So that's
Is
the
anybody
very.
speaking? I don't hear anything.
Yeah, can you not hear me?
I
Yes,
can hear
he's
you. It's
speaking.
just
I
you,
hear
Silver.
him.
You need to
Okay,
recycle.
who said they can't hear? Because I'll drop them down.
Silver Sailor.
Okay, let me
Silver,
drop them down.
silver. Yeah,
Okay,
Chief,
let me
here.
drop. And then I'll bring him back up. Okay, cool. Let me see what else. So yeah, that. What else have we got?
All right, well, I'm gonna pretty much close up. Maybe, we'll leave like 5 minutes or something at the end for our exit song and one more little minute to listen what the public feels about this war. But guys, in research the other night, and I'll just cover this very quickly. I want you guys to go ahead and look into this yourself. But in St. John's Cathedral, one of the craziest hold on, I'll just show you guys what this looks like. All right, this is in New York City, and this is one of the craziest cathedrals that they have. This is like a very beautiful church up in New York City. Well, one of the pillars in that cathedral is located on the western side of the cathedral. It's known as the apocalyptic pillars or the apocalyptic portal or something like that. And one of these pillars, which was designed in like the 1980s to 1990s, shows the Twin Towers, Building 7, an explosion, smoke, and nukes going off, and a great flood, guys. No joke. This is what it shows. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And so I go, bro, who designed this? And obviously it says this were carved between 1988 and 1997. And the Twin Towers, there's just such an emphasis on the Twin Towers and this hole right here. I just don't know what's going on. I think it's a little weird. It's very weird. And so, who designed it? Well, this guy named Simon Verity, who's from the UK. He's a British sculptor. Worked with the team of carvers between 1988 and 1997. This was years before 9/11 occurred, guys. Look at that shit. Coincidence or nah? All right. Then I look up who funded. All right, who funded Simon Verity and the Apocalyptic Portal at St. John's Cathedral? And we can see one of the top funders is the Florence Gold Foundation. Now we could go and look up all of these and da da da, but we're gonna just start with the Florence Gold Foundation really quickly for this live, just to show you guys how crazy this stuff gets. But Florence Gold Foundation is the foundation of the family of Jay Gold. And this foundation was funded by the estate of Florence J. Gold. It has provided over 64 million to various causes since 1984. And one of the first things that they provided was funding for the building of this specific pillar, of one of these pillars, guys. This is ridiculous, right? Now, who is Florence Gold? Or who is Jay Gold? Well, Jay Gold, ladies and gentlemen, was an old American robber baron of some sorts. And this gentleman was such a crazy robber baron. We'll just go ahead and put a marker here. Such a crazy robber baron, guys, that he had propaganda come out about him. He had propaganda out about him. Look at that nose, ladies and gentlemen. This is who we are fighting against. Go ahead, make a fist and put your thumbs up. I want you to take your thumb and put it in that little crest on your upper lip, that middle of your lip right there. Now take your pointer finger, put it out, and then just move it all the way up to touch the top of your forehead. And these are the type of people we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Literally shows him destroying Wall Street right here. And why does it say this? Well, very interesting, guys. Well, this guy basically monopolized a lot of the early railroad system in the United States. And it gets even worse because he also got caught trying to manipulate the gold market back in around the 1860s, 1870s. It's absolutely ridiculous. This guy was a complete finesser, 100%. And I seriously suggest you guys look into him. And he was known for literally manipulating the stock market. That is absolutely what he was known for, guys. So the partnership was successful until the Panic of 1857. But gold took advantage of the depreciation in property value and bought up former partnership properties, classic Rothschild move. Um, Gold began speculating, investing by buying stock in small railways. His father-in-law introduced him to the railroad industry. We can see here during the same period, Goldfisk became involved with Tammany Hall, the Democratic Party political machine that largely ran New York City at the time. They made its boss, William Boss Tweed, a director of the Erie Railroad, and Tweed arranged favorable legislation. Tweed and Gold became the subjects of critical political cartoons by Thomas Nast. Gold was the chief bondsman in October 1871. When Tweed was held at $1 million bail, Tweed was eventually convicted of corruption and died in jail. Due to the struggle to keep Cornelius Vanderbilt from taking over their interest in the railroad, Gold and James Fisk engaged in financial manipulations. Gold and Fisk conspired to begin to buy gold in an attempt to legally corner the gold market, and this was in like 69. Gold used contacts with President Ulysses S. Grant, brother-in-law Abel Corbin, to influence the president and his secretary general. So this goes back a very, very long time, ladies and gentlemen. The Gold Corner established Gold's reputation in the press as an all-powerful figure who could drive the market up and down at will. And this guy's foundation is the foundation who decided to invest in the making of this pillar that was built before 9/11. Now, how many people know this information? Because I think this is absolutely fucking ridiculous. They tell you what's going to happen before it happens, guys. And, I'm sure they use the direct energy weapons, whatever. There's this arrow down here. There's a bunch of stuff to look at. But, I mean, guys, like, is there much more to explain? It just gets ridiculous. All right, let's go back to see what the people have to say, and we will get out of here in about 10 minutes. You feel me? Shit's crazy, man. Kind of pisses me off.
We'll tell them. Make sure you got. Okay, sorry, AQ.
Yeah, Andrew, I have a few questions. I read one tweet from Patricia Marins yesterday about the Tomahawk reloads. So she says, with Omani ports under attack and completely exposed to the Houthis, as well as ports in the Horn of Africa, the American fleet can only be reloading its Tomahawks to the east, most likely in Pakistan or India. So, do you think India is getting involved and they're helping US in reloading the Tomahawks?
Yeah, they're going to have to reload, but we have support ships, and we have in here in the space in here. We have Joel Air Force. They'll be able to reload the Air Force lifting. The problem is getting it from land to the ship. So here's why we have like Naples, Italy, and the Sixth Fleet, and then without the Persian Gulf with the Fifth Fleet, we have to look at like I guess Diego Garcia. But what they'll probably do, honestly, the ship's going to have to put it into a port. And that's going to be a problem again. Without the pre-positioning surge, it's going to be a mess. And I know I keep using the word surge. You have to have everything pre-stockpiled in place. Now, I'm not at liberty to discuss about pre-positioned war reserve stock, but we have war reserve stock in certain places. But I guarantee you a lot of that war reserve was blown up in these days, 7 days of these missile strikes. Yeah. I hope that answered your question, sir.
Yes. And my other question is why Iran is still not hitting Abraham Lincoln? I read the reports that they hit multiple times, but it's still selling. I think it's not completely destroyed or it's still operational.
Right. Aircraft carrier is a huge, massive vessel. If you've ever been on one, it's like you're walking on a run. It's massive. They can take a lot of damage, a tremendous amount of damage. Now, we do know from every reports that they were hit with at least two, and we don't know the extent of damage, but apparently if their flight deck is okay and their engineering is okay, propulsion, and they have steerage way with their rudder system, they're going to keep they'll stay in the fight. And they've been effective against ships because there was another combatant, but we don't have the full details right in front of me. So they're very effective and they can reach way out. with those missiles, those anti-ship missiles. It takes an anti-ship missile, and the Chinese have supplied, and I've confirmed that with two sources, and they do. The Iranians do have the capability of hitting ships with anti-ship missiles.
Okay, and my last question is about Saudis joining the war because I just read a tweet by Saudi Defense Minister Khalid bin Salman. He says he met with Pakistani Chief of the Army Staff and Chief of Defense Forces, Field Marshal Asim Munir. We discussed Iranian attacks on the kingdom and the measures needed to halt them within the framework of our joint strategic defense agreement. We stressed that such actions undermine regional security and stability and expressed hope that the Iranian side will exercise wisdom and avoid miscalculation. So, do you think Saudis are going to join this war along with Pakistanis?
We've been talking about that in this space for 4 days, and Sully has the more information on that. I mean, I'd rather. Hey, Sully. Okay.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think Saudi is gonna. I don't think
Yeah.
Saudi is gonna join. I don't think Saudi is gonna join the war. I don't think they have the ability to join the war. I don't think they have the capability to join. They basically are a their capacity is what it is. If they were to join the war physically, what would happen is what there would be no utility in it because then it would mean that Israel could hit. Sorry, it could mean Iran could hit them carte blanche anywhere in the countries, and they've demonstrated they can hit them quite hard. If they can hit them in areas where there's actually defense interceptor missiles, imagine in areas where they aren't. Remember, the defense interceptor missiles are covering regions that are covered by the U.S. bases, U.S. military bases. So that would be the biggest mistake Saudi could ever make. So they're too afraid to do it. They can't do it. And by adding to the war, what can they do? What, some fighter jets who don't even know how to basically fly? Some Saudi fighters who don't even know how to fly. Like there'll be no benefit to it whatsoever. So no, I don't think they'll join. Okay, let's go to oh wait, there was someone here who we were gonna go to, but they've dropped I think. Let's go to interesting man. Go ahead.
And there's Abdul Sami also. He had his hand up for a long time.
Yeah, no problem. Interesting man, are you there? Okay, go ahead, Abdul Sami.
Hi, hello everyone. First of all, Suleiman, you've been doing an excellent job here. I've been listening to this space for the past almost a week now with this war, and I was also listening to you on the 12th day war. Okay, so first of all, what I think is that Trump cabinet is basically based off people that are very non-capable. If you look at people like Pete Hegseth, they're all very into war. So they changed the name of Department of Defense to Department of War. That's the first thing, and then we have seen videos of Hexet talking about the third temple that they want to build in place of Al-Aqsa. So that's another thing, right? And when Trump basically invaded Venezuela, he was basically very egoistic after that. So he basically thought it would be as easy to go with war with Iran as well. And I don't think he had a plan or anything at all. And I think that's been established by many people around here. But he didn't expect this reaction that he got from Iran either. So what now American military is trying to do is they're basically trying to react to what Iran is doing because of the sheer amount of reaction they got from Iran, right? And this is like the biggest problem for US because war cannot be fought on a reactionary basis. They don't have a plan. They didn't plan it logistically either.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time for me to get out of here. You feel me? But it's crazy times we're living in. I need everyone to lock in, just chill, and don't doom out too much, guys. We got a long ways to go, so we can't doom out too fast. We gotta last a long time. We gotta make it through the end of this shit. So you feel me? Let's see. What song should I play?
Yeah, I came up in the shadows where the charts don't lie, where the rugs come quick and the fakes multiply. No fits crypto in the booth, yeah, the voice they fear, dropping truth so sharp it'll split yo. Yeah, I saw a token looking shady, call his e-bike crew, talking big as seed papers that never came true. Community pressed me like bro don't speak, but I stood 10 toes down, never fold, never weak. 1v20 and I still don't break. No face crypto got the smoke they can't take. When the scam vibes hit it and the walls all shake, I expose that mess for the whole chain sake. I dug receipts from the dark like a digital grave. Found projects in the past they tried hard to save. Old scams resurface, same tricks, new name. Copy paste, white paper, same tie your game. But I don't back down, I don't bend, don't switch. When the heat comes heavy, I don't fold or glitch. I'm the ghost in the charts and the storm in the feed, dropping warnings to the fam so they never misread. 1v20 and I still don't break. No face crypto got the smoke they can't take. When the scam vibes hit it and the walls all shake, I expose that mess for the whole chain sake. They try to drown me in noise, but I cut through clean. All caps comments, whole squad looking mean, but truth hits harder than 1,000 mods. When the facts line up like a row of gods. So here's to the fighters who protect the space, who call out lies with a masked up face. No, for crypto ain't a name, it's a movement spark, a flashlight burning in the blockchain dark. You could send 20 at me, I'll still stand tall for the real ones watching who don't wanna fall. McCullen's rap rhythm in its Audubon night. I'm the voice of the people who just want what's right. 1v20 and I still don't break. No face crypto got the smoke they can't take.